Chapter 772. The cultivation of the inner world is only one aspect. There's also the improvement of one's skills and soul realm. The improvement of skills should be to convert all the chaos divine power in one's body into chaos origin power. The improvement of one's soul realm should be to master space and time on the basis of comprehending the natural laws of heaven and earth. Shaolin Yu began to meditate and gradually made some headway. Although there were only 5 words on the light screen earlier, they provided Shaolin Yu with a lot of information. Although his comprehension was average, at least he was now standing at an extremely high level. Some things could be enlightened with just a little guidance. With a clear direction, cultivation naturally became easier. The only difficulty in advancing to the 10th transformation was the comprehension and mastery of the temporal laws. The laws of space were similarly broad and profound, but at the very least, Shaolin Yu could clearly sense its existence. Moreover, he had long since been able to utilize it. Even ordinary cultivators would be able to grasp a bit of this, let alone Shaolin Yu. However, the law of time was more profound. Moreover, it was an invisible existence. It always surrounded everyone, but it could not be touched. Where does the past begin, and where does the future end? For a world, is the beginning of time the moment the world is formed? Is the end of time the moment the world is destroyed? The past, present, and future should be the 3 elements that make up time. They are born with chaos and destroyed with chaos. The profound temporal laws gave Shaolin Yu a headache. However, he gradually realized that he could deduce the temporal laws by using the natural laws of heaven and earth and chaos. The temporal laws existed because of chaos and multiplied. By mastering chaos, one could reverse time. The natural powers of heaven and earth, nurtured by chaos, could overturn heaven and earth and destroy time and space. The temporal laws of his inner world were formed by his thoughts. He did not need to control the external time and space. He could use his inner world to fight against it and change it. While Shaolin Yu was comprehending the laws of time, time passed quietly. Shaolin Yu had entered a state of cultivation. Close to 1,000,000 years had passed, and another major event had taken place on the Heavenly Saint Island. That was the 9th Saber, who had been at the peak of the late stage of the Heavenly Saint Island for many years, had finally comprehended the 9th level of the Heavenly Sword technique and passed through the longevity tribulation, successfully ascending to the longevity realm. This was a good thing for Shaolin Yu, because it meant that he had one less strong enemy. However, this was also a bad thing, because if Shaolin Yu wanted to seek revenge on Saber 9, she would have to go to the immortal realm to look for him. Several million years later, Shaolin Yu finally stopped cultivating. Clad in dark steel battle armor, he once again stood at the foot of the sacred mountain, facing countless experts of the sacred army. He was finally out. If I don't come out now, I will ascend to the world of immortals. The Shaman King appeared to be very confident. With a wave of his sleeve, the burning blood mist surged forward with an incomparably vast soul attack. Child's play. Shaolin Yu's lips curled into a disdainful smile. An even more powerful soul aura surged out of his body. In an instant, it was like a storm, extinguishing the dark green flames of the blood mist and easily dispersing the blood mist. How is this possible? The Shaman King turned pale with fright. His eyes widened in disbelief. Everyone attacked together. With the honorable 10,000 holies taking the lead, all the powerhouses attacked together. The sky was filled with flowing light, like a gorgeous galaxy surging through a broken dam. Stop! Shaolin Yu's voice was like thunder. With a wave of his hand, the space-time in front of him suddenly distorted. The gorgeous galaxy that was about to reach him immediately stopped moving. With another wave of his hand, the attacks launched by countless cultivators exploded like fireworks. However, they only bloomed with a gorgeous radiance, but there was no sound at all. Oh no, he has entered the longevity realm. The honorable 10,000 holies expression was even more interesting than the Shaman King's. However, he had guessed wrong. Shaolin Yu had not entered the longevity realm, but the chaotic creation stage of the 10th cycle. However, the chaotic creation stage was not weaker than the longevity realm. Moreover, the strength of the cultivators who had just entered the longevity realm was far superior. It's time for you to pay the price for your stupidity. Shaolin Yu's indifferent words were like a judgment. A circle of Dharma seals formed completely from the chaotic force formed at Shaolin Yu's fingertips. The terrifying power contained in it caused the sky to lose its color and the earth to tremble. Even the incomparably huge sacred mountain was trembling at this moment. The Shaman King's expression changed drastically. He immediately turned into a blood mist and shot toward the sky like a blood-red rainbow. It's too late. Shaolin Yu raised his hand and sent out the chaotic seal that he had prepared. Although the Shaman King's speed was fast, he was still one level lower than Shaolin Yu in terms of cultivation. Shaolin Yu's attack could firmly lock onto him. Boom! The Shaman King used this extremely short period of time to escape close to 100 miles away. However, he was still caught up by the chaotic seal. The blood-red rainbow he turned into exploded together with the chaotic seal. Shaolin Yu did not need to look carefully to know that the Shaman King had fallen. After all, the chaotic seal was formed from the chaotic force. Its explosive power was incomparably violent. In an instant, everything around the sacred mountain was razed to the ground. The hundreds of thousands of sacred army soldiers who were prepared to deal with Shaolin Yu were annihilated in an instant. Even the incomparably huge sacred mountain, which was known as the #1 peak in the God realm, showed signs of collapsing. The Shaman King's tragic death so easily caused the sacred army experts to feel despair. For the first time, the Honorable of 10,000 Holies felt powerless and weak. I'll return your golden spear to you. Shaolin Yu shot a golden light at the Honorable of 10,000 Holies. That golden light was the top-grade divine, spiritual treasure golden spear. It was also the treasure that the Honorable of 10,000 Holies was proud of. After receiving his golden spear, the Honorable of 10,000 Holies felt a bit more heroic. As the leader of a large force, he could not flee in panic like the Shaman King. Even if he had to die in battle. Fight! The Honorable of 10,000 Holies roared. He once again raised his golden spear and charged at the expert, who was wearing iron armor but had a calm expression. Unfortunately, he only left behind a tragic and desolate silhouette for everyone. The golden spear that he had just recovered was once again easily grabbed by his opponent and then broken by his opponent. He wanted to retreat in fear, but found that he had already been firmly imprisoned by an invisible mighty force. Then, under his terrified gaze, the spearhead of his golden spear ruthlessly pierced through his battle armor and pierced through his body. Another top-grade expert had fallen. Similarly, he had been killed in a single move. Anyone could see that Shaolin Yu had completely surpassed the heavenly connection realm and had reached a whole new realm. And this new realm was actually so powerful. It was so powerful that it made people yearn for it. At the same time, they also felt that it was somewhat inconceivable. The top-grade experts, who were usually high and mighty on the Heavenly Connection Sacred Island, were actually unable to resist at all. Kill yourself, Shaolin Yu said coldly to the second-grade expert of the Sacred Army. That old man in golden armor had also attacked the Hua men and participated in the pursuit of the experts from Earth. He was not an innocent person. The old man smiled. He picked up the Honorable of 10,000 Holies and then exploded with a loud bang. He did not want his body to be unable to rest after death, so he chose to destroy his body and soul. At this time, there were still many experts near the sacred mountain. They were completely stunned. In the blink of an eye, the top-grade experts that they relied on had all fallen. What else could they hope for? You are not innocent either. The Sacred Army has killed the Huam men and the people from Earth. You are either the executioners or the accomplices of the evildoers. You all deserve to die. The mighty power of heaven and earth gushed out from his body, covering the sky and rolling out in all directions. The natural laws of heaven and earth were stirred wantonly, and space and time were also distorted. Under such a heaven-defying divine ability, The bodies of cultivators were crushed and exploded one after another. The sacred mountain had become a slaughterhouse at this moment. Even the top-grade experts were unable to resist, let alone these ordinary cultivators. The gap between the chaotic 10th cycle and the heavenly connection realm was not something that could be made up for by numbers. No matter how many people there were, it would not be enough. In the blink of an eye, the originally lively sacred mountain became dead silent. Only Shaolin Yu, who was wearing the black iron battle armor, was standing alone in midair. A general success was built on the bones of 10,000. Since the beginning of Shaolin Yu's cultivation, he rarely had a peaceful day. He had experienced countless killings and killed countless cultivators. Even now, he could not feel the slightest bit of emotion, even though he had slaughtered hundreds of thousands of people with a wave of his hand. Perhaps it was because his cultivation level had increased, or because he had not killed all the enemies yet, but he did not feel much excitement after taking his revenge. In fact, even if he truly stood at the top of the heavenly realm and heavenly connection sacred island, Shaolin Yu felt that his journey seemed to have just begun. In the past, he should have been in someone else's trap, a chess piece of someone else. The path for now on might be the path that truly belonged to him. He wanted to go to the realm of longevity and eliminate Saber 9, the fish that had escaped the net. He wanted to see which Almighty was using him, and who was the one who wanted to kill him after using him. After that, he asked the powerhouses from Earth to come out of the chaotic spectrum. At this point, there was no longer any powerhouse or force that could threaten the safety of the cultivators from Earth. The sacred mountain had not collapsed. The jasper pool at the top of the mountain still existed, and the water in the jasper pool was still pure. The cultivators from Earth did not go anywhere else. They set up a new base on the sacred mountain that originally belonged to the sacred army. With the sacred mountain as the foundation for their cultivation, and with the help of the jasper pool, they would be able to become as powerful as the sacred army for a long time, unless another powerful being like Shaolin Yu appeared in the future. Now that Shaolin Yu was invincible in the heavenly realm and heavenly connection sacred island, there was only one obstacle and danger in front of him: the longevity tribulation. Shaolin Yu's heavenly tribulations in the past were different from those of ordinary cultivators. This time, it was probably the same. When he had just finished his cultivation and reappeared, he had already felt the might of the heavenly tribulation locking onto him. Soon, his own longevity tribulation would come. Only after passing the longevity tribulation would one become a true immortal realm powerhouse, and only then could one enter the realm of longevity. Chapter 773. Before the immortal tribulation arrived, his disciple Yichio had already arrived at the Tongtian Holy Island. When he heard from his master about the annihilation of the narrow divinity worlds Huamin, he was very surprised. While secretly rejoicing, he thanked Yin Tianzi. After settling the situation at Heavenly Saint Island, Shaolin Yu went to the narrow sense of the God realm before he ascended. With his current speed, it would only take him a few hundred years to reach the narrow sense of the God realm from Heavenly Saint Island. It wasn't difficult for Shaolin Yu to rebuild the Huamin in the narrow sense of the God realm. Although there weren't many Huamin left in the narrow sense of the God realm, there were still some Huamin who survived because they weren't in the camp when the sacred army massacred them. There were also some cultivators from the Earth lineage who avoided the disaster for various reasons. Shaolin Yu used them as a foundation to increase their strength and personally set up a defensive formation for the new Huamin camp. With Shaolin Yu's current cultivation level and strength, even those who had just ascended to the immortal realm wouldn't be able to break through the formation he set up. After staying in the narrow sense of the God realm for a while, Shaolin Yu found out that his sworn brother, Yunfei, had died under the sacred army's butcher's knife. He was furious about this, but there was nothing he could do. His old friend was gone. Although he stood at the top of the God realm, he didn't have the ability to revive a cultivator whose body and soul had been destroyed. After setting up the Huamin in the narrow sense of the God realm, he personally went to the immortal realm through the space passage. The stronger one's cultivation was, the more difficult it was to descend. This was because the repulsive force in the lower realm was stronger. No matter what cultivation level one was in, as long as one's cultivation level or combat strength exceeded the supremacy of the three realms by too much, they would be directly transported to the god realm by the three-realm space. Therefore, the Sacred Army only sent some divine monarch cultivators to the lower realm. After all, any cultivator would have the same effect. Originally, when a supreme expert like Xiao Lingyu came down to the lower realm, he would almost be rejected by the natural forces of the lower realm. However, he had a world in his body after all. He used one world to fight another world, so the time and space of the lower realm could not reject him. Back then, the Sacred Army had only sent a small number of experts to the lower realm. They had only destroyed the base of the Hua Min and massacred a large number of Hua Min's higher-ups and elite experts. They had not wiped out the cultivators of the Earth lineage. It was impossible for them to wipe out the cultivators of the Earth lineage. After all, the Hua Min cultivators were scattered throughout the immortal realm. It was extremely difficult to find all of them. Furthermore, the Sacred Army of the lower realm would also be unable to resist the resistance of the Hua Min cultivators and unleash power that exceeded the supremacy level. Thus, they would be expelled to the heavenly realm and would be unable to deal a devastating blow to the Hua Min and the cultivators of the Earth lineage. As the founder of the Hua Min, Xiao Lingyu's image was naturally deeply engraved in the hearts of the Hua Min cultivators. He could also easily reorganize the Hua Min of the immortal realm if he displayed some more powerful divine abilities. Originally, Xiao Lingyu had no intention of going to the cultivation realm. After all, there were not many descendants of Earth there. However, he still went down to the lower realm. He went down to the cultivation realm to see the Shuntian Academy and also to visit Earth. The Shuntian Academy had done well. Now, the cultivation philosophy of Shuan Tian's mandate had been deeply rooted in the hearts of the people. It was accepted and recited by the majority of the cultivators of the cultivation realm. Xiao Lingyu did not disturb the Shuntian Academy and the cultivation realm. He continued to use the greater teleportation. Soon, he found the place where he was born, Earth. To Xiao Lingyu's surprise, after countless years, Earth had regained its vitality. The distance between the Sun and Earth was also the same as before, providing Earth with the appropriate amount of light and heat. Xiao Lingyu felt that the reason for this should be because of the arrangement made by the ancient masters of Earth. He used his divine will to envelop Earth, and indeed felt the remnant fluctuations of the array. That array might not be very powerful, but it was enough for the environment of the cultivation realm. Although Earth was still there, his old friends had already disappeared. There was no trace of the past. After all, it had been too long. Xiao Lingyu wandered around the brand-new Earth for a while before he finally left the world of cultivation, feeling dispirited. After returning to the sacred mountain of the heavenly sacred island in the heavenly realm, Xiao Lingyu asked his relatives and friends, who were about to face the immortal tribulation, to wash their bodies in the jade pool one by one. This could increase their chances of success. Then, Xiao Lingyu began to set up the array. Chaotic 10th Revolution realm was already comparable to a longevity realm expert. Setting up a formation with this realm, in addition to the fact that Xiao Lingyu had completely digested Liao Zhou's inheritance and became a formation Dao expert, the defensive formation he set up was naturally incomparably powerful. Moreover, in order to set up this array, Xiao Lingyu used almost all the resources he could borrow or snatch in his collection. This array could not be easily broken by a true immortal realm master. After all, the immortal tribulation of ordinary cultivators was to test the cultivators below the immortal realm. The greatest power of the immortal tribulation could not kill an immortal realm master. The power of the immortal tribulation should not be comparable to that of a true immortal realm master. Therefore, this array could completely withstand the bombardment of the immortal tribulation thunder. However, the last immortal tribulation thunder was something that the cultivator had to resist with his body. Any defensive means would be ignored. The test of the immortal tribulation thunder would directly affect the cultivator's body and soul. This was similar to the divine tribulation. What Xiaoling Yu could do was to prevent his friends and family from being injured by the previous immortal tribulation thunder, so that they could face the last immortal tribulation thunder in their peak state. With the help of this formation, Xiaoling Yu believed that his relatives and friends had more than a 70% chance of successfully transcending the tribulation. After all of them had cultivated for a very long time. In the chaos spectrum, they had all cultivated their cultivation techniques and realms to perfection, and all of them had touched the realm of immortality. Just as Xiaoling Yu finished setting up the array, an uninvited guest came to the side of the sacred mountain. The person who came was a woman wearing a white woolen coat. She had an extremely beautiful face like a white fox, peachy lips like a vermilion brush, a sharp chin, a fair and long neck, and a head of fine black hair draped over her shoulders, with a few strands fluttering in the wind. She was tall and had a graceful figure. She looked to be 18 years old, but there was a faint sadness lingering in her beautiful eyes. She gave off a feeling that she had experienced the vicissitudes of life. This array should be able to block 10 of my attacks. Looking at the array that was more than 1,000 miles away from the sacred mountain, the woman said with a calm expression. A moment later, Xiaoling Yu arrived in a flash. He looked at the woman and frowned. Immortal realm? Only an immortal-level expert would be able to say something like that. It has been many years. You have now reached the peak of the God realm. You have 1 foot in the immortal realm, the woman said without changing her expression. Although I don't remember being an old acquaintance of yours, I do feel a sense of familiarity when I see you. As Xiaoling Yu spoke, he also tried to use his divine sense to spy on the woman. However, the other party's realm was not lower than his, so he could not see through her as he wished. Many years ago, in the Eastern Devil Cave, the 9-tailed devil fox. You killed it and took me away, the woman said simply. Haha, it really is an old acquaintance. Xiaoling Yu smiled bitterly and asked, Are you here for revenge? The woman nodded. The enmity of killing my mother is irreconcilable. I will repay the kindness of raising me with my life. If I can kill you today, then I will repay your kindness with my life. Xiaoling Yu shook his head and said, You should have just passed the immortal tribulation. Even if you were a heaven demon, you can only fight me to a draw at most. You can't kill me. However, the woman insisted. How do you know I can if I haven't tried? Xiaoling Yu said curiously, Even if you were a heaven demon, your cultivation speed is really too fast. If I'm not wrong, you must have obtained many fortuitous encounters. The woman said calmly, You don't have to guess. I can tell you the truth. Although many fortuitous encounters came inexplicably, and it seemed like someone was helping me, but no matter what, even if I was used, at least I have the strength to take revenge. Xiaoling Yu shrugged and said, You have seen through it. That's right. After all, fox demons have always been intelligent and cunning. It is very difficult to use all of you without leaving any traces behind. Since you know you were used, why didn't you think of me being used as well? In reality, I'm just a chess piece. The reason I killed your mother and saved you was because of someone else's arrangement, wasn't it? Xiaoling Yu could imagine that the 10-tailed fox was probably a backup plan to kill the donkey after it had outlived its usefulness. He could not help but praise in his heart. The person who set this up really put a lot of thought into it. He even calculated so precisely that he and the 10-tailed fox would end up like this. The only thing he did not understand was that no matter what, he had helped the person who set up this trap to complete something. Why did the person set up a dead end for him? Could it be that he was afraid that he would be a threat to him? The person who set up this trap was able to set it up so precisely. How high was his cultivation level? Xiaoling Yu really could not think of how he could threaten him. I only look at the facts. I don't want to think so much. In any case, after I kill you, I will die too. If I die, there will be nothing left. The woman said stubbornly. Since that's the case, then let's try. Xiaoling Yu said indifferently. One move is enough. The woman instantly transformed into a fox demon that was as large as a small mountain. The fox demon was snow white, but it had 12 tails. Waves of aura that could cause the world to lose its color and space to become chaotic surged out. The powerhouses who were cultivating at the Holy Mountain all felt a huge wave of pressure coming toward them. Their expressions changed drastically as they flew up high. However, they did not dare to get close. Although Xiao Yu did not want to fight with this pitiful fox demon, the other party was an immortal realm powerhouse after all. He still cautiously put on the black iron battle armor. At the same time, he raised his aura and secretly mobilized the natural power of heaven and earth in his inner world. When the aura was raised to a certain level, the fox demon's body swayed and turned into 12 fox demons that were also snow white. However, these 12 fox demons only had one tail, but their aura was comparable to that of an immortal realm powerhouse. This was a kind of doppelganger ability. Those doppelgangers were not illusory illusions, but real existences. Chapter 774. The 12 immortal fox demons started to circle around Xiao Lingyu rapidly, causing Xiao Lingyu's vision to become blurry. Apart from the white shadows that drifted around, it was difficult for him to see the complete figure of a single fox demon. However, Xiao Lingyu was not in a hurry to make a move. He just narrowed his eyes and stood quietly on the spot. With the black iron armor made of chaotic black iron, Xiao Lingyu believed that even if the 12 fox demons attacked him together, they would not be able to do anything to him. The 12 fox demons did not attack together. After flying around for a while, they started to let out sharp whistles. The whistles could shatter metal and rock, and they surged through time and space with extremely powerful soul power attacks. It seemed that the Heavenly Fox also knew that Xiao Lingyu's defense was too strong, so it wanted to use a soul attack to end the battle. If you hide, I will kill all your friends and family. Such a powerful soul attack had already caused Xiao Lingyu's soul to tremble. The easiest way to deal with it now was to hide in the chaotic spectrum or the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. However, just as this thought appeared in his mind, the Heavenly Fox's threatening words had already reached him. Xiao Lingyu revealed a bitter smile. Then, he resisted the surging soul power and started to move around quickly. Although the Heavenly Fox's soul attack was powerful, its cultivation level was not much higher than Xiao Lingyu's. Furthermore, the black iron armor also had a certain level of soul defense, so Xiao Lingyu's soul consciousness would not be shaken or knocked out in a short period of time. Every time he stopped, Xiao Lingyu would throw the array formation materials into the void. Due to the huge improvement in his strength, his method and speed of setting up the array formation had naturally increased by a lot. After a dozen breaths of time, Xiao Lingyu stopped again and yelled out loud, "Stop! Soul Seal!" Suddenly, waves of fog surged crazily, and time and space distorted. The Soul Seal formation set up by a chaotic 10th cycle cultivator was powerful enough to neutralize the opponent's surging soul power attack. The 12 heavenly foxes transformed into streaks of white light as they shuttled through the array formation. Their screeches grew sharper and sharper, but after being weakened by the soul sealing array, they were unable to harm Xiao Lingyu at all. The heavenly fox was obviously not proficient in the Tao of array formations, but she still continued to launch soul attacks while using her powerful strength to forcefully break through the array. However, the Heavenly Fox's speed of breaking the array was not fast, and it consumed a lot of energy. When she finally destroyed the array, Xiao Lingyu set up a new soul-sealing array. Actually, Xiao Lingyu still had time to counterattack the Heavenly Fox, but he did not do so. Perhaps he felt guilty and wanted the Heavenly Fox to retreat. After breaking through 10 soul-sealing arrays in a row, the Heavenly Fox finally had no choice but to revert to its original form due to its exhaustion. A 12-tailed Heavenly Fox was panting as it stood on the peak of a small mountain. Then, it transformed into a beautiful woman wearing a white woolen coat. When the beautiful woman had arrived, she had a sad look on her face, but now there was disappointment and sorrow on her face. All these years, in order to quickly increase my strength, I did not have time to cultivate the Tao of array formations. I never thought that I would lose to the Tao of array formations today. Why didn't you attack? The woman smiled bitterly and continued to ask, I can't kill you. Even if you fight to the death, I won't have an easy time if I kill you. I will have to face the immortal tribulation in my peak state. Xiao Lingyu replied indifferently. Sigh. Then I hope we can meet again in the immortal realm. The woman sighed, then quietly turned around and disappeared in a ray of white light. She said she would only use one move. She is quite stubborn. Xiao Lingyu shook his head and smiled. His expression relaxed a lot. He could understand the Heavenly Fox's conflicted feelings. He also sympathized with the Heavenly Fox. If he was in the same situation as the Heavenly Fox, he would probably make the same choice as her. The hatred of killing her mother was irreconcilable. The kindness of raising her was repaid with her life. Probably, in her opinion, if she could not kill Xiao Lingyu, she would be killed by Xiao Lingyu. She did not expect that Xiao Lingyu would not fight to the death with her. Xiao Lingyu did not like to leave any loose ends. However, it was really difficult for him to make a move on the Heavenly Fox. Back then, he was forced to make a move on the nine-tailed magic fox. Now that the nine-tailed magic fox's daughter came to take revenge, it was reasonable. Moreover, the nine-tailed magic fox had helped Xiao Lingyu once. Of course, the most important thing was that the Heavenly Fox was obviously a person who valued friendship and righteousness. Her words just now made Xiao Lingyu somewhat moved. The Heavenly Fox left and would definitely not come back. She would soon ascend to the immortal realm. Xiao Lingyu did not need to worry about her revenge. The person who set the trap didn't kill me. But let me find out who set the trap. Humph. Xiao Lingyu returned to the sacred mountain and began to recuperate. Only a few hundred years had passed. Xiao Lingyu's heavenly tribulation had yet to come, but the longevity tribulations of her relatives and friends had arrived almost at the same time. However, Xiao Lingyu brought everyone into the primal chaos spectrum and then went out to transcend the tribulation one by one. He stood guard from afar. The defensive power of Xiao Lingyu's formation was indeed strong. Even when the longevity tribulation's lightning struck it, it could only shake but not collapse. As for the last test, it was aimed at the realm of the body and soul. As long as one had touched the realm of immortality, as long as there was no knot in one's heart, they would be able to pass it. First, Miao Ying, Qing Xian, Anya, and Linker successfully passed the immortality tribulation. Then, it was Lil Bing and the Devourer of Heaven. There was nothing in their hearts that they couldn't let go of, and these powerhouses were not hurt by the lightning tribulation at all. The last test of the immortality tribulation state of mind was not a big threat to them. When many cultivators faced the longevity tribulation, even if they could make it to the last step, most of them were seriously injured. Therefore, their success rate of transcending the tribulation was very low. Most of the cultivators would be annihilated by the lightning tribulation in front of them. They couldn't make it to the last step at all. After successfully transcending the tribulation cloud would cast a ray of light to envelop them, helping them to improve the realm of their soul and the quality of their body, giving them the capital to live forever. After cultivators reached the realm of immortality, there was no limit to their lifespan. As long as they didn't encounter any accidents or mishaps, they could live forever. Next, it was Jiang Lanyue, her sister, and Yueru's turn. The reason why she let them go last was that Xiao Lingyu was worried about them. I'll go first. Jiang Lanchong volunteered. To Xiao Lingyu's surprise, Jiang Lanchong also passed the longevity tribulation very smoothly. Moreover, under the last test of the immortality tribulation, she didn't seem to have any inner demons that were difficult to resist. What are you looking at? Do you really want something to happen to me so that you don't have to take responsibility? Jiang Lanchong glared at Xiao Lingyu. From this sentence, Xiao Lingyu could guess that this little girl had calmly accepted the truth. She just pretended to hate her on the surface. It's my turn. After Xiao Lingyu strengthened and repaired the formation again, Yueru entered the formation and began to accept the test of the longevity tribulation. In fact, Yueru didn't have much of a knot at her heart. Although Qi Hongxian was her husband, he deliberately used her. She had already accepted Qi Hongshuan's death. The only thing that could affect her state of mind was her feelings for Xiaoling Yu. However, she gradually let go of this after the evil demon Li Jia explained everything. Under the last test of the immortality tribulation, Yu Eru still encountered some problems. However, she was a person who had suffered a lot after all. The quality of her willpower was definitely far superior to that of ordinary cultivators. In addition, her cultivation technique had a miraculous effect on resisting inner demons. In the end, she passed the longevity tribulation without any mishaps. In the end, among all of Xiaoling Yu's important relatives and friends, Jiang Lanyue was the only one left. Heartless man, after my sister passes the longevity tribulation, you have to hold a grand wedding for us, Jiang Lanchang said before Jiang Lanyue left the chaos spectrum. That's what I should do. Anya was the first to stand up and respond. The rest of the women also echoed in agreement. Your sister hasn't said that she wants to marry me yet. Xiaoling Yu seemed to be depressed. You haven't asked. How do you know that my sister isn't willing? Jiang Lanchang objected. In fact, everyone knew that Jiang Lanchang's sudden suggestion was to untie the last knot in her sister, Jiang Lanyue's heart. Xiaoling Yu was very cooperative. He walked in front of Jiang Lanyue and grabbed Jiang Lanyue's hands. Staring into Jiang Lanyue's eyes, he asked, Actually, I've really liked you for a long time. Back in the ancient god's cave in the cultivation realm, the gap between us was too big. I didn't dare to say it out loud. However, today, in front of everyone, I want to ask you one thing. Do you like me? Will you marry me? This sentence made even Xiaoling Yu's scalp tingle. The rest of the women were a little envious. Xiaoling Yu had never said such tender words to them. Jiang Lanyue looked at everyone. Seeing that everyone, including her sister, was looking at her encouragingly, she felt a sweetness in her heart. After all, she really did have feelings for Xiaoling Yu. Most women like to listen to romantic words, especially from a man they liked for a long time. They would often remember and be happy for a long time. Even female cultivators who had touched the immortal realm were the same. Jiang Lanyue was originally worried that her sister would oppose it as strongly as before. However, seeing that her sister had already let go, she didn't have to be stubborn. I'll answer your question after I pass the longevity tribulation. Jiang Lanyue walked out of the chaos spectrum with a smile and entered the array to face the longevity tribulation. Perhaps it was because of Xiaoling Yu's confession at the last moment, her sister's encouragement, or because her realm was high enough. Jiang Lanyue also faced the last longevity tribulation in her peak state under the protection of the array and successfully passed through it. Because he wasn't sure how crazy his longevity tribulation would be, Xiaoling Yu fulfilled his promise and held a grand wedding for Linger, Yu Eru, and Jiang Lanyue. The wedding was hosted by the Mahamayuri. Many strong people from Earth attended the ceremony as guests. Leaders of various forces who had already submitted came to congratulate them. Chapter 775. Yu Eru and Jiang Lanyue were both immortal realm experts who had passed the immortality tribulation. Moreover, they were both virgins. After spending a few days with them, Xiaoling Yu had indeed improved a lot. Although Xiaoling Yu was in the chaotic 10th cycle, he had not passed the immortality tribulation. He was not a true immortal realm expert. Therefore, Yu Eru and Jiang Lanyue were in a higher realm than him. This was also the key reason why he could improve so much. Even so, it was still unknown whether Xiaoling Yu could pass his immortality tribulation. According to past experience, his heavenly tribulation was at least 3 times more powerful than that of ordinary cultivators. Xiaoling Yu and his wives had lived a happy life for less than 500 years before his immortality tribulation finally arrived. A terrifying pressure descended from the sky. All living beings on heaven-reaching Sane Island felt this pressure. Countless living beings trembled at this moment. Even many bloodthirsty and violent fierce beasts prostrated themselves. Xiaoling Yu chose to transcend his tribulation at a place 500,000 miles away from the sacred mountain, so as to not affect the cultivators of the sacred mountain. A vast and boundless tribulation cloud occupied the sky with a radius of millions of miles. It could be said that it covered the sky and covered the earth. As long as the cultivators on heaven-reaching Saint Island looked up, they could see the rolling and roaring tribulation cloud. The endless rumbling of the tribulation thunder shook the heavens and the earth. It was as if the heavens were roaring in anger. Just from the size of the tribulation cloud and the pressure that surged out, one could tell that Shaolin Yu's immortality tribulation was much more powerful than ordinary immortality tribulations. Shaolin Yu could easily block the ordinary immortality tribulation thunder with the formation. However, the formation would not be able to block all of the tribulation thunder that he was about to face this time. The tribulation cloud brewed for a few hours. Then, a purple-gold tribulation thunder came crashing down. However, what was surprising was that after this tribulation thunder, countless other purple-gold tribulation thunder came crashing down together. In an instant, the area within a radius of thousands of miles was turned into a sea of thunder. The raging lightning scattered all the energy fluctuations within several thousand kilometers, leaving only the endless, dense, and high-grade lightning energy. The thunder that came crashing down from the sky completely sealed off the area. Even the natural power of heaven and earth and the space-time waves were distorted. Shaolin Yu had no way of dodging such a dense bombardment of lightning. He didn't try to dodge either. The purple-gold lightning struck his dark steel battle armor, but it only produced terrifying electric arcs. It couldn't penetrate the dark steel battle armor's defense, much less cause any damage to Shaolin Yu. The tribulation thunder, black and white tribulation thunder, did not give Shaolin Yu's time to cultivate. Tribulation thunder. And tribulation thunder did. Black tribulation thunder did not give him any time to cultivate. Black and white tribulation thunder. These black and white tribulation thunder were clearly filled with the aura of chaos energy. Tribulation thunder. The black and white tribulation thunder came crashing down in large batches. The power of thunder was even more powerful. It almost sealed off everything within thousands of miles. Shaolin Yu also used his dark iron battle armor to withstand the tribulation thunder. The tribulation thunder could not hurt him. The black and white tribulation thunder lasted for 2 hours before stopping. The land was scorched and full of destruction. It didn't stop for even a moment. The 10-colored tribulation lightning fell like a lightning punishment. Although Shaolin Yu's dark steel battle armor could block it, it couldn't completely negate the power of lightning contained within. However, Shaolin Yu's physical defense was very strong. The lightning that entered his body through the dark steel battle armor only caused his aura to gradually become chaotic and his body to feel a little numb. However, the 10-color tribulation thunder was already the most powerful tribulation thunder of an ordinary longevity tribulation. Ordinary cultivators who survived the 10-color tribulation thunder would be considered to have reached the final step. As long as they survived the last tribulation thunder, they would be considered to have passed the longevity tribulation. However, after Shaolin Yu survived the 10-color tribulation thunder, more white tribulation thunder came crashing down. The white tribulation thunder was bright and dazzling. They seemed to be falling randomly, but before they hit the ground, they suddenly gathered together and formed a lightning pillar that was dozens of feet wide. It hit Shaolin Yu's head fiercely. Boom! An earth-shattering explosion exploded above Shaolin Yu's head. Even with the defense of the black iron battle armor, Shaolin Yu was still dizzy from the explosion. His blood and chi were in turmoil as his body smashed into the ground, creating a large crater. Shaolin Yu crawled out of the hole and could not help but spit out a mouthful of blood. Before Shaolin Yu could recover, and before he could put up any defenses, more white tribulation thunder came crashing down. Fortunately, the dark iron battle armor's defense was extremely high, and Shaolin Yu's physical quality was not low. He was still able to withstand 18 strikes, but he was clearly injured. It would be fine if this white tribulation thunder was the last wave of tribulation thunder, But what made Xiao so angry that he almost cursed was that right after the white tribulation thunder ended, more black and gray tribulation thunder came crashing down from the sky. They carried a chaotic light and a dense aura of chaos origin force. Just like the white tribulation thunder, the black and gray tribulation thunder suddenly gathered together when they were hundreds of feet away from the ground. Then, they hit Xiaoling's head fiercely. What surprised Xiaoling was that the demon ceiling tower sensed his danger and took the initiative to put him into the 9th floor of the demon ceiling tower. What surprised him even more was that hiding in the demon ceiling tower could prevent the heavenly tribulation from locking on to the cultivator undergoing the tribulation. However, the black and gray tribulation thunder kept striking the demon ceiling tower. Even though the demon ceiling tower was made of chaotic dark iron, it could not withstand the black and gray tribulation thunder for long. The demon ceiling tower lasted for 4 hours before it exploded. Before the tribulation thunder, Xiaoling did not expect that the tribulation thunder of his longevity tribulation would be able to destroy a chaos ultimate treasure. Fortunately, although the demon ceiling tower was blasted into countless pieces, the black and gray tribulation thunder finally stopped. How? Was this a test? This is clearly an extermination. Xiaoling remembered that he had felt this when he was undergoing the tribulation thunder in the past. However, the heavenly tribulation this time made him feel even more terrified. Even the dark iron battle armor with invincible defense was destroyed. How was he going to deal with the next tribulation thunder? Could this chaotic longevity tribulation be the final trump card left behind by the person who set this up? Xiaoling could not help but wonder. He had fought so hard until now. Was his journey going to end under the tribulation thunder of the longevity tribulation? What made Xiaoling despair was that the black and gray tribulation thunder stopped. Then, a large number of tribulation thunder continuously struck down. These tribulation thunder were not of the same type. There were purple gold ones, tin-colored ones, black and white ones, bright white ones, and even black and gray ones. The tribulation thunder that previously appeared at the same time and struck down on Xiaoling's head. The other tribulation thunder were still fine. However, the bright white and gray tribulation thunder were not something that Xiaoling's physical body could withstand. He could only choose to hide in the primal chaos spectrum at this time. Hiding in the primal chaos spectrum was the same as hiding in the demon ceiling tower. The heavenly tribulation did not lose its sense of him. It seemed that once he began to undergo the tribulation thunder, he could no longer hide. The primal chaos spectrum could hide from ordinary cultivators. However, even the top experts of the God world had ways to find it. It was even more impossible for it to hide from the terrifying heavenly tribulation. Countless tribulation thunder crazily struck the primal chaos spectrum. After sacrificing another primal chaos supreme treasure, Xiaoling withstood the bombardment of this wave of tribulation thunder. When the primal chaos spectrum also collapsed, the tribulation thunder immediately ended. This tribulation thunder seems to be just to destroy these 2 primal chaos supreme treasures and not to kill me. Otherwise, why would the tribulation thunder stop every time the primal chaos supreme treasures are destroyed? Xiaoling thought strangely. After the 2 primal chaos supreme treasures were destroyed, the tribulation thunder finally gave Xiaoling some time to rest. It did not come down one wave after another. Xiaoling recuperated for almost a year. Then, from the tribulation clouds, a gray and hazy primal chaos tribulation thunder struck down. Xiaoling used a supreme grade divine spirit treasure to block it. However, the tribulation thunder ignored it. After passing through, it accurately struck Xiaoling's body. In an instant, Xiaoling had already determined that this was the last tribulation thunder, and it was to test his state of mind. Xiaoling had experience of being tortured by his inner demons for many years. In addition, he had comprehended the primal chaos supreme principles of heaven and earth all year round. His state of mind was absolutely fine. Moreover, he had no worries at all now. Moreover, His state of mind had long seen through everything. After easily passing the inner demon's tribulation, a ray of light shone down from the tribulation clouds, causing Shaolin Yu's realm to soar by a lot. As he did not know how the realms after the immortal realm were divided, Shaolin Yu did not know what level he was at now. In any case, after passing the tribulation thunder, his realm was much higher than his wife's. Although he succeeded in passing the tribulation thunder, he lost 2 primal chaos supreme treasures. This made Shaolin Yu feel a little distressed. In his opinion, those 2 primal chaos supreme treasures were his foundation and reliance in the world of immortals in the future. Losing them meant losing 2 huge advantages. After Shaolin Yu succeeded in passing the tribulation thunder, his relatives and friends who had passed the tribulation thunder earlier than him began to ascend one after another. As everyone's tribulation thunder was not far apart, the time they took to ascend was also about the same. Almost within 10 years, all his relatives and friends who had reached the immortal realm had ascended. After ascending, I wonder if there's still a need to look for them. After waiting for another 500 years, a ray of light shone down from the sky. The ray of light wrapped around Shaolin Yu's body and slowly rose into the sky under the gaze of thousands of people. The Huamin cultivators around the sacred mountain waved goodbye. They knew that there was a legend about Shaolin Yu in the past. This legend could be said to be soul-stirring and could be said to be an epic myth. After this, everything about him would become history. The influence he brought to this part of the universe would gradually disappear. Enveloped by the multicolored light, Shaolin Yu entered a pitch-black and long spatial passageway. Then he felt dizzy. His body was not under his control at all. He was flying forward at an extremely fast speed. Apart from pitch-black darkness, he could not see anything. After an unknown amount of time, the ray of light on Shaolin Yu's body finally dissipated. He also stopped in front of a light door. On the light door, there are 8 big words written on it: the Gate of Immortals. One can enter, but not leave. Chapter 776. He leaped into the light door, but he could not pass through it. Shaolin Yu was bound by an invisible force. No matter how hard he struggled, he could not break free. What surprised him was that the invisible force invaded his body and quickly spread to the inner world of his dantian. In just a moment, he realized that his inner world had disappeared. Then, his body was pushed out by a huge force. A wild and primitive aura hit him in the face. There was also a faint, salty sea breeze. Before Shaolin Yu could take a look at his surroundings, a strong gust of wind came down from the sky. Shaolin Yu looked up and saw a huge bird as big as a cloud. It was flapping its wings and pouncing toward him. The big bird had a pair of silver hook-like claws and a mouth that looked like 2 swords. It was obvious that it saw Shaolin Yu as its prey. Oomph. Shaolin Yu snorted and raised his hand to release a primal chaos seal. The primal chaos seal, which was formed by the primal chaos force, whizzed out and collided with the big bird in an instant. Boom! There was a loud explosion. The big bird did not even have time to scream before it was blown into nothingness. It looked powerful, but it had not even reached the connecting heaven realm. How could it block the attack of the primal chaos seal? Originally, there were many big birds flapping their wings and pouncing over as if they were ready to fight for food. However, at this moment, they all flapped their wings and flew away, not daring to come closer. Shaolin Yu finally had time to look at his surroundings. In front of him was a boundless sea. Below him was a beach. The sea was very calm. The waves were not more than 3 feet high. Occasionally, he could see huge fish jumping out of the water. There were many beautiful shells on the beach. There were also many white bones left behind by sea creatures. When he turned around, he saw a dense forest. There were faint roars of monsters and beasts. Is this the world of immortals? Shaolin Yu began to carefully sense everything in this world. What surprised him was that his divine will was actually firmly confined within his body. No matter how much the golden soul pearl trembled, it was unable to let even a trace of soul energy out of his body. Since his soul power couldn't come out of his body, his divine sense naturally didn't exist. It was even more impossible for him to communicate with the natural power of this world. The spatial pressure in the world of immortals was extremely strong. Even Xiaoling Yu, who had reached the immortal realm, was unable to lift herself up and fly. How can that big bird fly? It's clearly only in the Saint God stage. Xiaoling Yu seemed a little confused. However, this wasn't a big deal. What he found even more difficult to understand was where his inner world had gone. The weather in the world of immortals is really strange. I don't know if there's any mystery behind it. At night, the vision was a lot blurry. Even though Xiaoling Yu's eyesight wasn't weak, he could only see the situation in a radius of 10 feet around him. It was far from being able to see during the day. Moreover, this mountain forest seemed to be relatively calm during the day. However, at night, the roars of demonic beasts and ferocious beasts became louder and more frequent. The rustling sound in the mountain forest also became more frequent. Xiaoling Yu was new here and wasn't familiar with anything. In order to be safe, he didn't rush. Instead, he found a stone wall and used the sharp, life-affirming dagger to carve out a small cave. After that, he entered the cave and meditated to wait for daytime. The night was getting deeper and deeper. The weather was also getting colder and colder. However, in the mountain forest, roars that shook the surroundings were unceasingly transmitted. It was as if there was an intense battle going on not far away. Even the ground in this small mountain would tremble slightly from time to time. Under this kind of situation, it was very difficult for Xiaoling Yu to concentrate on cultivating. The primal chaos force in the world of immortals was obviously denser than the world of gods. However, he didn't dare to wantonly absorb it. He was afraid that the abnormal energy fluctuations would attract danger to his side. After entering the world of immortals, although he could already live forever, it didn't mean that he wouldn't die under any circumstances. It only meant that he wouldn't die naturally and wouldn't have to worry about his lifespan running out. However, if he encountered a strong enemy or an irresistible danger, he would still die. Not long after, in the bright September night sky, specks of stars appeared. In the distant sky of the world of immortals, there was also a galaxy, and Xiaoling Yu, who was doing his best to concentrate on cultivating, felt that the connection between him and the galaxy that had disappeared from his inner world had strengthened by a lot. He couldn't help but walk to the entrance of the cave and look up at the vast sky. He felt that the galaxy of his inner world was in the night sky above his head. However, it was so far away that he couldn't reach it. The nighttime in the world of immortals was as long as 72 hours. Xiaoling Yu spent this period of time apprehensively. First, he welcomed the light of dawn. Then, he gradually felt that he was surrounded by warmth again. When the 9 blazing suns appeared in the sky, Xiaoling Yu walked out of this simple and crude little cave and continued to walk towards the depths of the mountain forest. Xiaoling Yu felt that the depths of the mountain forest was the continent of the world of immortals. It was the place where the cultivators of the world of immortals lived and cultivated. Just like this, Xiaoling Yu traveled in the day and rested at night. After a total of 30 days, he discovered that the creatures in this mountain forest mostly cultivated during the day and came out at night. Moreover, when they were cultivating, they were all exposed under the sunlight. They didn't hide their figures. Xiaoling Yu felt that it was strange. During the day, he also sat cross-legged on a large blue stone and slowly entered a state of cultivation. Through comparison, Xiaoling Yu discovered that cultivating during the day was indeed faster than cultivating during the night. The warm sunlight enveloped his body, making the circulation of his power more comfortable. Moreover, his soul was also more awake. More importantly, the surrounding energy seemed to be more active during the day. The resonance between the energy and the cultivator was also more obvious and more compatible. At night, because the body was cold, the surrounding temperature was too low. Not only was cultivation slow, but the effect was also not good. Moreover, when cultivating at night, there would be a formless cold energy being absorbed from the outside world into the body. It would make the cultivator's body, soul, and nascent soul feel extremely uncomfortable. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu finally understood why those creatures cultivated during the day and only came out at night. Vigorous exercise at night could make their bodies heat up. With this, they could resist the cold of the night. After all, there were many creatures with low cultivation. They didn't have an inner flame like the primal true flame to resist the cold. As the time he spent in the world of immortals increased, Xiao Lingyu's understanding of the world of immortals also increased. Another 2 months passed. Xiao Lingyu still didn't encounter any danger. However, what surprised him was that he continued to move forward in a straight line. He actually passed through this mountain forest and arrived in front of a beach. Once again, he saw an endless sea. Could it be that this is an island and not a continent? Xiao Lingyu seemed a little disappointed. After another period of exploration, Xiao Lingyu determined that the place he was at was an island surrounded by the vast sea. The area of the island couldn't be considered very big. There weren't any powerful existences on the island. The highest cultivation level was only at the early or middle stage of the heaven-connecting realm. There were many fierce beasts on the island. They often fought at night. If the defeated party couldn't escape, their bodies would be devoured by the enemy, leaving behind a pile of bones. And in the sea, there would occasionally be some strong sea beasts climbing onto the shore. Most of the sea beasts were just basking in the sun on the beach. There were also a few that would rush into the depths of the mountain forest on the island and fight with the fierce beasts on the island. Xiao Lingyu couldn't help but feel awkward. This small island was obviously not the main place of the world of immortals. He was trapped here. Right now, he couldn't fly. Could it be that he had to swim in the sea or make a wooden raft to cross the sea to leave? Those fierce beasts of the Sage God stage can jump 1,000 feet high. Why can't I? Chapter 777. After carefully observing for a few months, Xiao Lingyu finally found the crux of the problem. During this period of cultivation, Xiao Lingyu already felt that his body had become lighter. Cultivation was one aspect. It didn't mean that he had made great progress during this period of cultivation. Instead, it was because he had absorbed a lot of things that were unique to the world of immortals. These things could help his body adapt to the environment of the world of immortals. It could also help him resist the spatial pressure of the world of immortals. Or it could be said that with those special things in his body, the spatial pressure of the world of immortals was gradually alleviating for him. Another aspect was that the creatures that had lived in the world of immortals for many years could also help him reduce the pressure. For example, eating the flesh of some ferocious beasts or some fruits. These ferocious beasts and fruits had also absorbed some of the things that were unique to the world of immortals over the years. That was why they were able to survive in the world of immortals, even though they weren't that strong. After making these discoveries, Xiao Lingyu began to search this island. Everything on this island posed no threat to him. Naturally, he quickly cleaned up the entire island. He directly swallowed all the fruits into his stomach. As long as a ferocious beast or demonic beast dared to approach him, he would mercilessly kill them. Then, he would roast their flesh and eat them. In this way, only 2 months had passed. He was already able to fly in the air. However, he couldn't maintain it for a long time. Moreover, it was difficult for him to move quickly. He didn't know how vast this vast ocean was. Xiao Lingyu tried to fly once. Unfortunately, after flying for 4 hours, he couldn't find any other islands or land. Instead, he was constantly harassed by the birds in the sky and the sea beasts in the sea. In the end, he had no choice but to return. Because the sky and sea were not safe, Xiao Lingyu also gave up the idea of making a wooden raft to cross the vast ocean. This vast ocean was boundless. Only God knew if there was an extremely powerful existence in it. He still couldn't take the risk easily. Thus, Xiao Lingyu calmed down and began to concentrate on cultivating on this island. He strived to increase the time he could fly a little longer and increase his speed. This also caused the number of fruits on this island to become fewer and fewer. The ferocious beasts and demonic beasts were also quickly killed off. Fortunately, there were also many sea beasts in the sea for them to hunt. After nearly 10 years of cultivation, one night, Xiao Lingyu, who was sitting cross-legged on a reef near the sea, suddenly felt an abnormally powerful aura approaching from the depths of the sea. He opened his eyes and stood up, frowning as he looked at the dark sea in the distance. A gale swept over from the depths of the sea, sweeping up layers of monstrous waves. The momentum was astonishing. Accompanying the howling winds were the roars of sea beasts that shook the heavens. The raging waves slammed against the island, and the hard reefs were smashed into smithereens, while the strong winds blew down countless tall trees. The starry sky, where the 9 full moons could be clearly seen, was now covered by layers of thick black clouds. Xiao Lingyu's brows knitted together. He turned around and left. He found a cave on the island with ease and hid inside. Soon after, a torrential rain poured down. The raindrops were swept up by the strong winds like sharp arrows. They were actually able to easily pierce through the leaves, so much so that when the raindrops fell on the hard rocks, they produced a pong-pong-pong sound. Xiao Lingyu tightly restrained his aura and used a huge rock to block the entrance of the cave. He had just arrived at the world of immortals, so he didn't want to provoke powerful existences. He didn't want to cause trouble for himself. The strong winds and torrential rain lasted for an entire night and only stopped when dawn came. The entire island and the nearby sea returned to tranquility. Xiao Lingyu felt that the danger should have passed, but for safety's sake, he didn't immediately leave the cave. Instead, he waited for an entire 10 days. After 10 days, there were no more accidents on the island, and there were no other big movements. Xiao Lingyu pushed away the rock and walked out of the cave. The island was already in a mess. Countless trees were cut down, and the unripe fruits that Xiao Lingyu intentionally left behind were all destroyed. The ground and the rocks were full of holes. Xiao Lingyu's expression was calm as he walked on the island. The loss of the island didn't affect him much. However, on the beach of the island, Xiao Lingyu saw a huge sea beast lying on the beach. The sea beast looked like a sea otter, but its body was like a small mountain. However, it was obvious that there were a few serious wounds on its body, and the wounds were still bleeding. The blood dyed the nearby seawater red, and the thick smell of blood was a little pungent. Xiao Lingyu only took a few glances, and the sea beast already felt his presence and turned its head to look at him. Roar! With just a glance, the sea beast suddenly stood up and roared at Xiao Lingyu. Xiao Lingyu waved his hand, indicating that he didn't have any bad intentions, and then turned to leave. However, the sea beast that was obviously heavily injured let out a loud roar, and then rushed toward Xiao Lingyu. As the sea beast rushed forward, a large black cloud suddenly appeared in the sky above its head, and gusts of strong wind also appeared out of nowhere. A powerful aura locked onto Xiao Lingyu. Xiao Lingyu immediately turned around again, and the sea beast's palm was already coming down with a mighty force. It looked like a simple palm, but it obviously carried a mighty and invisible force, and it sealed a large area of space. When the sea beast was angry, it could make the sky and the earth lose its color. It could make black clouds gather above its head. It was obviously extraordinary, and its palm made Xiao Lingyu feel that he couldn't block it. Xiao Lingyu also felt that he couldn't dodge. He snorted coldly, stomped his feet on the ground, and his body shot up like an arrow. Just as he was about to come into contact with the sky-covering palm, the suicide dagger appeared in Xiao Lingyu's hand, and he swung the dagger towards his head. The suicide dagger was extremely sharp, and it made a deep cut on the palm. However, the palm still came down with a mighty force, and in an instant, Xiao Lingyu was slapped into the sand of the island. Xiao Lingyu's body quality was extremely high, but after being hit by the palm, he felt dizzy and couldn't help but vomit a few mouthfuls of blood. This sea beast was obviously at the immortal stage, and it definitely wasn't the kind that had just advanced. It had been cultivating at the immortal stage for many years, and its strength was not to be underestimated. When the sea beast raised its palm, Xiao Lingyu flew out from the sand, and his expression was unusually grave. The sea beast seemed to be surprised that its palm didn't kill Xiao Lingyu. Then, it suddenly opened its mouth, and a gust of wind wrapped in a cold fog swept past where Xiao Yu was. What was surprising was that wherever the gust of wind passed, everything in the space was sealed in ice. Even Xiao Yu was no exception. His body was frozen in a layer of ice crystals. Not only could he not move at all, but he couldn't even use his skills at this moment. At the same time, waves of bone-chilling energy began to crazily drill into Xiao Yu's body, as if it wanted to freeze his life force from the inside. Fortunately, Xiao Yu's body quality was extremely high, so the cold energy couldn't quickly invade his body. The chaotic divine infant also began to spit out chaotic true fire and circulated it throughout its body to resist the cold energy's invasion. The sea beast waited for 10 breaths of time before it swung its gigantic palm at Xiao Yu again. If Xiao Yu's body was frozen from the inside out, his body would shatter into countless pieces with the layer of ice when the palm landed. Bang! An explosion was heard, and Xiao Yu's body was sent flying far away. Along the way, he spat out mouthfuls of fresh blood. His body landed heavily on the ground, and waves of intense pain came from all over his body. Not only was his chi and blood surging, but many of his bones and tendons were also broken. The sea beast's cultivation base should be much higher than Xiao Yu's. In addition, Xiao Yu had just entered the world of immortals, and his body had yet to be fully adjusted. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been so helpless. The attack still did not kill its opponent. The sea beast seemed even more bizarre. With its rich battle experience, it did not give its opponent any time to react. It opened its mouth and spat out a whirlwind. The whirlwind was also extremely fast. In the blink of an eye, it had wrapped Xiao Yu inside. Then, a few sharp teeth flew out of the sea beast's mouth and shot towards Xiao Yu, who was trapped in the whirlwind. No matter how hard Xiao Yu struggled, he was unable to break out of the whirlwind. At this moment, he realized that the sea beast's cultivation base was much higher than his. He could not even break through its simple moves. The sea beast's sharp teeth accurately hit Xiao Yu's body and pierced through it. Xiao Yu had always been proud of his body's quality. However, under the attack of those sharp teeth, it was as fragile as a thin sheet of paper. The injuries on his body worsened by a lot. The sea beast was obviously not satisfied with just injuring Xiao Yu. It stretched out its palm again, but it did not hit Xiao Yu's head. Instead, it grabbed Xiao Yu. First, he felt his vision turn black. Then, a huge force came from all directions. In an instant, the bones in his body started to crackle. If it was not for his high-quality body, Xiao Yu would have been crushed into a meat patty. At the moment of life and death, Xiao Yu opened the vertical eye between his brows. A beam of destructive sanguine light easily hit the sea beast's clenched palm. The beam of destructive sanguine light pierced through the sea beast's giant palm and suddenly exploded. Roar! The sea beast let out a pained roar as its entire fleshy palm was blasted apart. After all, that beam of destructive sanguine light had used up almost 30% of Xiao Yu's energy. The explosion of a large amount of essence blood and chaos origin power was naturally powerful. Without waiting for the sea beast to attack again, Xiao Yu's heavenly eye of destruction shot out another beam of destructive sanguine light. Because the distance was too close and the attack was too sudden, the sea beast was unable to dodge. Its head was struck by the beam of destructive sanguine light and exploded. After its head exploded, a cloud of bloody mist burst out. The sea beast's mountainous body also collapsed with a loud bang. Streams of blood gushed out from the sea beast's neck like a tidal wave. The scene was extremely horrifying. Chapter 778. Dragging his heavily injured and weak body, Xiao Yu walked to the front of the white bead. He could feel waves of majestic and powerful energy ripples coming from it. This white bead was obviously a good item. Xiao Yu took out a jade box and put the white bead away. Then, Xiao Yu felt that there was an incomparably pure life essence flowing out of the sea beast's corpse. He quickly placed one of his palms on the sea beast's corpse and started to absorb the life essence of the sea beast's body. A thick and pure life essence entered his body and was refined by the primal chaos fire. It slowly worked on his body and helped him recover from his injuries. After a full day, more than half of the sea beast's life essence flowed into the space of the world of immortals. A small part of it was absorbed by Shaoling Yu. This small part of the life essence was enough to completely heal Shaoling Yu's injuries and even nourish and improve his body. Shaoling Yu took out the jade box again and was about to study it carefully. Suddenly, he saw a big golden ship slowly approaching from the distant sea. The big ship looked golden and dazzling. The radiance overflowing from it made the surrounding sea water shine with golden waves. Vaguely, he could see some cultivators at the bow of the ship. Shaoling Yu quickly put away the jade box and stood on the shore, waiting for the big golden ship to come to shore. Looking at the direction the big golden ship was heading, it was obviously heading towards this small island. In less than 10 minutes, the big ship had already arrived at the shore. Looking at it from a close distance, the big ship was even bigger. It was no less than 3,000 feet long and no less than 3,000 feet wide. It was like a floating golden island. Apart from its huge size, the big golden ship's shape was very normal. There was nothing special about it. After the ship reached the shore, 3 men flew out. One of them was dressed in luxurious clothes, like a young master, while the other 2 were holding unsheathed long swords in their hands. They were dressed in martial arts attire and stood behind the young master in luxurious clothes, looking like bodyguards. The young man in embroidered clothes looked at the reddish seawater and smelled the faint smell of blood in the air. He frowned and said, "The moon otter should have died here." After that, the young man in the brocade robe slowly walked up to Shaoling Yu, waved his clasped fist, and said, "Brother, was the moon otter killed by you?" Shaoling Yu nodded and did not deny it. He could guess that the moon otter that this person was talking about was the giant sea beast that he had just killed. "That's a good move, brother." That moon otter was already at the 9th celestial layer of longevity life. Although it was heavily injured after being hunted by us for a long time, it was definitely stronger than a 7th celestial layer of longevity life. "Brother, since you were able to kill it, you must also be at the 9th celestial layer of longevity life, right?" Something like that. Shaoling Yu still did not deny it, even though he did not know what the 9 heavens of longevity meant. "I wonder if brother is willing to transfer the life pearl of the moon otter to me. I am willing to exchange it for 50,000 yang crystals." The rich man in embroidered clothes seemed to be very sincere. "That pearl is also very useful to me," Shaoling Yu said non-committally. At the same time, he was trying to guess the meaning of the 2 new terms, life pearl and yang crystal. He was even more vigilant in case the other party attacked him for the life pearl. The rich man in embroidered clothes seemed to be in a difficult position. He continued, "To tell you the truth, I have already accumulated 9 yang pearls and 8 moon life pearls. Now, I only need 1 more moon life pearl to advance to the 9th celestial layer of longevity life. I hope brother can help me. If brother thinks that 50,000 yang crystals is too little, I am willing to add another 10,000. Brother is already at the 9th celestial layer of longevity life pearl, so the life pearl of the moon otter is not very useful to brother." 80,000 yang crystals, Shaoling Yu said indifferently. Although he was confused, he acted as if he knew everything. The rich man in embroidered clothes frowned. After pondering for a moment, he nodded and said, "Okay, I will do as brother says." The rich man in embroidered clothes then took out a storage bag and handed it over, saying, "Brother, please check it first." Shaoling Yu took the storage bag without hesitation. However, his soul power could not form divine sense, so he could not see the contents of the storage bag. "Not bad." Shaoling Yu pretended to have finished checking and put away the storage bag. Then, he handed the jade box containing the life pearl of the moon otter to the rich man in embroidered clothes. The rich man in embroidered clothes opened the jade box in front of Shaoling Yu, and then a little excitement appeared on his face. Thank you for your help, brother. I will not disturb you any longer. Goodbye. The rich man in embroidered clothes turned to board the ship. Wait. Xiaoling Yu called out softly. When the rich man looked back suspiciously, he smiled and said, I have been out for a long time and am a little tired. I wonder if brother is willing to give me a ride? I am honored. The rich man in embroidered clothes paused in surprise, and then very politely led Xiaoling Yu onto the golden ship. Then, the golden ship began to turn around and slowly accelerated into the depths of the sea. May I ask where brother is cultivating? Since they were on the same ship, it was inevitable to communicate. Seeing that the ship was moving steadily, the rich man in embroidered clothes came to talk. I am cultivating, and I don't have a place to stay for long, Xiaoling Yu replied. The rich man in embroidered clothes naturally thought that Xiaoling Yu was unwilling to reveal his information, so he did not ask any more questions. Instead, he said, arrange a quiet room for brother. That would be the best. Xiaoling Yu nodded. The rich man in embroidered clothes brought Xiaoling Yu to the cabin. After walking through a long corridor, they entered a small, quiet room. When they returned to the deck, a guard holding a sword asked the rich man in embroidered clothes, Second Master, is he really at the ninth heaven of longevity realm? The rich man in embroidered clothes said with uncertainty, Anyway, I can't see through his specific cultivation level. Judging from his aura, he seems to be at the fifth or sixth heaven of longevity realm. Although his aura was not strong, it revealed a power that made me feel danger. Even if he is not at the ninth heaven of longevity realm, he is not far from it. Otherwise, how could he have killed the sea moon otter? The ninth heaven of longevity realm is already considered a master in the inner sea of Gourd Bay, and all of them have been famous for a long time. However, I have never heard of this person. He is most likely not a cultivator from Gourd Bay, the guard said. He could be from the outer sea, or he could be from the inland. Looking at his cautious appearance, I guess he doesn't like to have too much interaction with others. Maybe he is out on business this time. The rich man in embroidered clothes first analyzed, and then said, no matter what, it is not good to be on bad terms with him. Just serve him carefully. Second Master, this time out to sea, not only did you collect the life pearls of the ninth heaven, but you also found dozens of longevity realm cultivators who have just ascended. It can be said that you have a great harvest. When you return, the family head will be very happy, the guard said flatteringly. The only pity is that most of the female cultivators we found have already lost their virginity. We can only bring them back as maids, the rich man in embroidered clothes said with dissatisfaction. There are already many maids in the family. They can also be incorporated into the scarf guard. They are all top masters in the lower realm. In the longevity realm, it is inevitable that they will be somewhat aloof and arrogant. It is good to let them suffer some hardship in the scarf guard, a guard suggested. The scarf guard is managed by Big Sister. Her standards are very high. Not just anyone can enter. The rich man in embroidered clothes smiled. Because they already had a great harvest out to sea, the rich man in embroidered clothes commanded the big golden ship to move forward at an extremely fast speed. Almost every moment, they drew a white trail that was several thousand miles long on the vast and boundless sea. Along the way, they passed by countless islands. However, such a dazzling and obvious big golden ship did not encounter any attacks from sea beasts or birds. The big golden ship moved forward steadily and swiftly. Nearly 100 years passed like this. Only then did the big golden ship slowly decelerate. Finally, it stopped at the shore of a beach. First, bring those cultivators who have just ascended off the ship. The rich man in embroidered clothes instructed the guards on the deck. Understood. The guards accepted the order and went down to the cabin one after another. They opened the quiet rooms on both sides of a long corridor and invited the cultivators out one by one. These cultivators were not dressed neatly like the guards. They were dressed differently. At this moment, they all appeared curious and somewhat nervous. Under the guidance of the guards, this group of cultivators was brought to the deck, and then they were brought down from the ship. Seeing that the guards had gone far away, the rich man in embroidered clothes personally went down to the cabin and knocked on the door of a quiet room. The door of the quiet room was then opened, and Xiao Lingyu walked out from it. "Brother, the big ship has already docked. If you have time, you can come to my humble home as a guest," the rich man in embroidered clothes said politely. There's no need. I'm already very grateful that you're willing to give me a ride. I wouldn't dare to disturb you again." Xiao Lingyu did not need the rich man in embroidered clothes to guide him. He walked along the long corridor to the deck. As he moved, he asked, "Where are we now?" The rich man in embroidered clothes replied, "We've arrived at Gourd Island." Xiao Lingyu nodded indifferently, but he did not know where Gourd Island was. After getting off the big ship and reaching the shore, the rich man in embroidered clothes said politely, "If you're not in a hurry to leave, you can come to the Yun family as a guest at any time." Xiao Lingyu cupped his fists and said, "If I have time, I'll definitely go." After that, the two of them bowed again and bid farewell. After walking for a while, Xiao Lingyu soared into the sky. After flying up, he discovered that Gourd Island was not small. It looked like a huge gourd lying in the sea. Presumably, this was how Gourd Island got its name. After flying for a while, Xiao Lingyu vaguely saw the outline of a sizable city. He then slowed down and flew over. When he was about 10 kilometers away from the city, Xiao Lingyu descended from the sky and walked forward. On the way, he saw many villages and towns where cultivators gathered. The closer he got to the city, the more densely packed the villages and towns seemed. Chapter 779. After paying the entrance fee of 1 yuan crystal, Xiao Lingyu stepped into Gourd City. On the way, Xiao Lingyu dripped his blood on the storage pouch to recognize it as its owner. After that, he could use his mind to take out the items inside. The purpose of entering the city this time was very clear. It was to collect some information about the world of immortals. Many shops that sold jade slips became Xiao Lingyu's first choice. Because he didn't understand the prices of the world of immortals, it was inevitable that he would be cheated by the shops. However, most of the jade slips were only worth a few dozen yuan crystals, so Xiao Lingyu didn't take them to heart. After passing through several shops and purchasing dozens of jade slips, Xiao Lingyu discovered that 80,000 yuan crystals was indeed a large sum. However, what made Xiao Lingyu depressed was that he couldn't read the contents of the jade slips because his soul power couldn't form divine sense. Others whose cultivation was lower than his could use divine sense, but he couldn't. There must be a problem here. After passing through several streets, Xiao Lingyu stopped in front of a 3-story pavilion. The pavilion was very lively in front of it. There were actually many cultivators waiting to enter the pavilion. Business seemed to be very good. There was a blue plaque on the lintel of the first floor with 3 golden words, "Awakening God Pavilion," written on it. Xiao Lingyu walked to the back of the line and asked a seemingly middle-aged cultivator, "What kind of business does this Awakening God Pavilion do?" "Business is unexpectedly good." The cultivator first glanced at Xiao Lingyu and found that he couldn't detect his aura. Then, he respectfully cupped his fists and said, "Senior, this Awakening God Pavilion is a place for cultivators who have just ascended to the world of immortals to remove their soul shackles. Because the souls of cultivators who ascended from the lower realm are not compatible with the world of immortals. Their soul power is firmly suppressed in their knowledge sea and can't come out of their bodies. This Awakening God Pavilion can help everyone remove this restriction." "Oh, I see." Xiao Lingyu nodded and then silently stood in the line. The cultivator frowned and asked, "Senior also wants to enter the Awakening God Pavilion. Let's go in and take a look." Xiao Lingyu indifferently replied, "You've also just ascended?" The cultivator asked in surprise. "Yes," Xiao Lingyu said calmly. "You've only just ascended, yet you're still putting on such an unfathomable look. You're even calmly accepting the title of senior. How shameless." The cultivator said furiously, "You're the one who called me senior." "I didn't force you," Xiao Lingyu replied. "Oomph, brat, you better be careful in the future. Don't let me see you outside." The cultivator coldly snorted and threatened. "Ha!" Xiao Lingyu only laughed. Pang San, before you awaken. You must remain calm. You have violated the precepts. At this moment, an old man in a silver-gray robe walked over and said, Our Scarlet Pine stronghold has never bullied others. You've all just ascended not long ago, so you should support each other. Don't get involved in meaningless disputes. Yes, yes, yes. You're right. Pang, Sen has learned his lesson. The middle-aged cultivator called Pang, Sen repeatedly cupped his hands and replied, Little brother, how long have you ascended? The old man turned around and asked Xiao Yu with a face full of smiles. More than 100 years. Xiao Yu replied, More than 100 years? The old man frowned slightly and said doubtfully, As far as I know, those who ascended from below would be placed on islands in the inner and outer seas. Those who have just ascended cannot fly for long periods of time. The power of the soul is also tightly restricted within the body. If you're not familiar with the environment of the world of immortals after 100 years, it's even more difficult to travel from the sea to Gourd Island. A kind-hearted person helped me and let me board a ship. Xiao Yu vaguely said, Little brother, since you've just ascended, you probably don't have a place to stay, right? The old man seemed to be concerned and asked, I like to be alone. Xiao Yu replied, I know, little brother, you must be a leader in the lower realms. You must be respected by everyone. But little brother, you must understand that this is the world of immortals. There are countless experts in the immortal realm. Since you've just arrived, it's better to have a safe place to stay. As the saying goes, if a chopstick is gently broken, 10 pairs of chopsticks will be firmly held together. A good man also needs 3 helpers. Thank you for your kindness. I won't stay on Gourd Island for long. After I wake up, I'll leave. Before the old man finished speaking, Xiao Yu interrupted. The old man did not give up. After he awkwardly stopped persuading, his eyes lit up and said, Little brother, you've just ascended. I'm afraid you don't have many yang crystals in your bag. This time, you'll need 500 yang crystals to wake up. For a cultivator who has just ascended, 500 yang crystals is not a small amount. Xiao Yu smiled and said, I don't lack yang crystals. Thank you for your reminder. No way. Where did you get your yang crystals? The old man was very surprised. There's no need to explain this to you, right? Xiao Yu said impatiently. I'm Qing Song, the second in command of Red Pine Stronghold. If you change your mind, little brother, you can walk 1,000 miles out of the south gate and you'll see Red Pine Stronghold. Just say my name? Of course, of course. Xiao Yu said perfunctorily. After waiting in line for an hour, the old man, Qing Song, led the 5 cultivators in front of Xiao Yu into the Awakening God Tower. Xiao Yu, who was originally at the back of the line, was now at the front of the line. After waiting for less than 100 breaths, a cultivator holding a large saber guarding the door on the first floor said to Xiao Yu, Go in. The first floor of the Awakening God Tower was quite large. There were 8 counters inside, and only one was empty. Xiao Yu walked towards that counter. After paying 500 yang crystals, Xiao Yu received a jade token with the words Second Floor Ding Mao engraved on it. According to the guidance of the female cultivator behind the counter, who always had a smile on her face, Xiao Yu went up to the second floor and easily found Room Ding Mao. Room Ding Mao was not big. There was only a small square table less than a foot tall and 2 prayer mats. An old man in a white robe sat cross-legged on one of the prayer mats, facing the door of the room. After Xiao Yu entered, he opened his eyes and said, Sit. When Xiao Yu sat cross-legged in front of him, the old man asked, How long have you ascended? Xiao Yu said truthfully, More than 100 years. The old man did not have any strange expression. He nodded and said, It's easier to wake up within 1,000 years of ascension. Relax. As he spoke, the old man took out a golden pill and said, There are 2 ways to wake up. The first is to use the tower's secret method to shake your soul. The second is to take the awakening pill. The first method requires you to completely let go of your mental defenses and may injure your soul. The second method is much simpler and has no risk. Xiao Yu asked curiously, Since shaking one's soul can wake up, why does everyone still come to the Awakening God Tower? The old man smiled and said, shaking one soul is just a simple method. There are many ways to do it. If other cultivators don't know this method and shake the soul of a newly ascended cultivator, it will definitely shatter the other party's soul. Only the secret method can guarantee safety. At most, it will injure the other party, but it will definitely not destroy the other party's soul. Cultivators who have just ascended are almost all in the early stage of the immortal realm. Their realms are not stable, so their souls are very weak. After listening to the old man's explanation, Xiaoling naturally understood a lot. He asked again, "This awakening pill should be paid separately, right?" The old man nodded and said, "It's worth 1,000 sun crystals. If you can't take out that many sun crystals, it's fine. We'll use the first method to wake up." Xiaoling hesitated for a moment, then took out 1,000 sun crystals and said, "What if this awakening pill doesn't work?" The old man took the sun crystals and said, "Don't worry. If it doesn't work, we'll refund your sun crystals and compensate you with another 1,000 sun crystals. The awakening pill's efficacy dissipates very quickly. If you don't believe me, just take it. At most, you'll be able to wake up in 2 hours." Xiaoling did as he was told. He went to a corner of the room and sat down cross-legged. Then, he took the awakening pill. The old man continued to receive other cultivators who came to wake up. However, for cultivators who had just ascended, it was difficult to take out 500 sun crystals. Most of them needed to join a force or team and be funded by others to wake up. Few people could take out 1,000 sun crystals like Xiaoling to buy the awakening pill. Just as the old man had said, the medicinal efficacy of the spirit awakening pill dissipated extremely quickly. Almost as soon as it entered Xiaoling's stomach, it had already dispersed. Then, it quickly rushed into Xiaoling's knowledge sea and wrapped around his golden soul pearl. The efficacy of the pill constantly attacked Xiaoling's golden soul bead and then slowly seeped into it. The old man cast a spell step by step to wake up the cultivators who came in. Most of the cultivators who came out were pale, and their steps were unsteady, as if they had not recovered from serious illness. Moreover, their expressions showed that they had a lingering fear, as if they had just woken up from a nightmare. It was obvious that although the old man's secret technique could wake them up safely, the cultivators who were awakened would definitely suffer a lot. Xiaoling did not suffer much, but after 2 hours, the efficacy of the awakening pill had completely seeped into his golden soul bead. However, he still could not use his soul strength to form divine sense. His soul strength was still firmly confined in the golden soul bead. Impossible. The old man listened to Xiaoling's explanation with a look of disbelief. His face was ashen as he said, "Come and sit across from me." There was already a cultivator sitting across from the old man, but when that cultivator saw the old man's expression, he tactfully stood up and stood to the side. After Xiaoling sat down, the old man pointed a finger between his eyebrows and ordered, "Start trying to release your soul strength." After a moment, the old man withdrew his finger and said in confusion, "Not only is your soul strength special, but your cultivation is also not weak. If you didn't just ascend, then you really haven't woken up yet." After pondering for a long time, the old man took out 2,000 yang crystals and said, "I can't wake you up in your situation. You have to go to the 3rd floor." Xiaoling calmly took the yang crystals and said, "Who do I look for on the 3rd floor? Which room?" The old man smiled and said, "The 3rd floor is for experts to wake you up. You need me to bring you up." Xiaoling had worked hard for many years and naturally understood the old man's meaning. He immediately returned the 2,000 yang crystals to the old man. Chapter 780. There were only 3 rooms on the 3rd floor of the Awakening God Tower. The old man from Ding Mao's room on the 2nd floor brought Xiaoling to the room closest to the stairs. The door opened automatically, and the old man and Xiaoling entered the room one after the other. Not only was this room large, but it was also divided into an inner and outer room. Moreover, the decorations were very luxurious. There was a thick plush carpet, a large crystal ceiling, and antique tables and chairs. There were also some obviously extraordinary calligraphy and paintings. Under one of the walls, there was a desk that was half the height of a person. Behind the desk was a very young man. There were two people opposite the young man. One was a young and beautiful woman, and the other was a stooped old man who held a walking stick. The beautiful woman sat on a chair, and the old man stood silently beside her. When Xiao Yu and the old man from Ding Mao's room entered, the three people in the room all looked over. The beautiful woman's face was a little pale, and there was even a trace of blood at the corner of her mouth. With just a glance, the beautiful woman slapped the desk and angrily rebuked, "You're an awakening god expert. You actually injured my soul after awakening." The young man smiled bitterly and explained, "Third young miss, your situation is special. You were born less than 100,000 years ago, and now you're already at the fourth heaven of longevity realm. The difficulty of awakening is far greater than that of cultivators who just ascended. I've already done my best. Third young miss, please understand." "Understand? I understand you, but who will understand the pain I suffered just now?" The beautiful woman said angrily. "How about this? The awakening fee will be waived. Just treat it as compensation." The young man shook his head helplessly and then pushed a storage bag in front of the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman didn't refuse and immediately put away the storage bag. However, she still didn't give up and said, "There's really a problem with your awakening level. In order to avoid misleading people, I suggest you go and cultivate properly before showing off your skills." The young man was criticized like this, but he didn't get angry. He smiled and said, "Third young miss, you should quickly go to the side and meditate. The injury to your soul can't be delayed. This soul-nourishing pill should be of some help to third young Mississippi. Of course, it's free." The beautiful woman received the medicinal pill and said, "At least you know what's good for you." Then, the beautiful woman casually found a nearby chair and sat down cross-legged. She took some pills and quietly recuperated. The stooped old man remained silent and stood silently behind the beautiful woman with an indifferent expression. "What's wrong with him?" The young man pointed at Xiao Yu and asked, "His soul is special. His cultivation level shouldn't be low. The spirit awakening pill can awaken him." Ding Mao cupped his fists and replied respectfully, "Could it be that he was also born in the world of immortals?" The young man frowned and asked, "No, he ascended from the lower realm. It has only been 100 years since he ascended," Ding Mao replied. "You can leave now." The young man waved his hand at Ding Mao's old man. After the old man left, the young man pointed at the chair where the beautiful woman was sitting and said, "Please sit." Xiao Yu had just sat down when she sensed a divine, that was not very strong, begin to recklessly scan her body. She knew it was the divine will of the young man sitting opposite her, so she didn't try to defend herself. "It's good that you can cultivate your body to this level in the lower realm." The young man first praised her and then said, "You have indeed ascended for 100 years. It seems that your cultivation level was also cultivated in the lower realm. What level of immortals do you think you are at now?" Xiao Yu shook his head and smiled bitterly. "I'm not sure, but I'm sure that I'm much stronger than ordinary cultivators who have just ascended." The young man said, "The stronger your cultivation level, the harder it is to awaken your spirit. If you are at the 7th heavenly layer of immortals, none of us can awaken your spirit. Of course, it's extremely rare for someone who has just ascended to reach the 7th heavenly layer of immortals. You can pay 5,000 yuan crystals first. Awakening an expert's spirit was naturally much more expensive. Fortunately, Xiao Yu still had tens of thousands of yuan crystals. After receiving the yuan crystals, the young man said, "You should meditate and adjust your breath first. Try to keep your mind in a clear state." Xiao Yu closed his eyes and began to meditate. About an hour later, he suddenly felt a wisp of spiritual will like a gentle breeze, gently probing into his sea of consciousness. He knew that the young man had begun to awaken his spirit. Judging from the young man's actions, Xiao Yu felt that the young man's spirit awakening technique should be quite good. The divine will quickly wrapped around his golden soul bead, and then began to gradually strengthen. The divine will surrounding his golden soul bead became thicker and thicker. This continued for the time it took to drink a cup of tea. The divine will wrapped around Xiao Lingyu's golden soul bead, gradually divided into 8 parts. They were arranged in a very special formation in 8 directions of the golden soul bead, and then suddenly trembled together. However, the trembling was very light at first, and then gradually intensified. It caused Xiao Lingyu's golden soul bead to tremble at the same time. It didn't cause too much of shock to Xiao Lingyu's soul. This further proved that the young man's spirit awakening technique was not as weak as the beautiful woman had said. 2 hours later, the formation formed by the 8 divine will begin to spin around Xiao Lingyu's soul at an accelerated speed. Xiao Lingyu's golden soul bead also trembled violently and spun rapidly. At this step, Xiao Lingyu gradually felt a swelling pain in his soul. The depths of his consciousness were surging. His face gradually turned pale, and his body began to exude scalding sweat. This step lasted for 4 hours before it stopped. The divine will slowly withdrew from Xiao Lingyu's knowledge sea. However, after Xiao Lingyu's golden soul bead gradually returned to normal, he still felt that his soul power couldn't be used. The young man slowly stopped and said with a gloomy face, "Fellow Taoist, your realm must have exceeded the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life. It's too difficult to awaken your spirit." At this moment, the beautiful woman woke up from her meditation. She sneered and said, "I told you that your technique is weak, but you're still not convinced. Just now you said that my soul is special and my realm is too high. Now, you're using the same words to deal with others. He's a cultivator who has just ascended for more than 100 years. You actually said that his realm is beyond the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life. You're making up such a reason. Do you believe it yourself?" The young man could be said to have given way to this beautiful woman again and again. Not only did he not charge her for awakening her spirit, he even gave her a soul-nourishing pill. This beautiful woman was still mocking him. No matter how good his temper was, he couldn't help but feel a little angry. "Mister, please don't take offense. My family's young lady has no ill intentions." The stooped old man, who had been silent all this time, saw that the young man's eyes had narrowed. He quickly interrupted. After hearing the stooped old man's words, the young man's expression softened a little. He didn't say anything to the beautiful woman. "I know you're definitely not convinced. Do you dare to make a bet with me?" The beautiful woman said aggressively. "What bet?" the young man asked curiously. "I bet that this guy's realm is definitely not beyond the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life. Let's bet 200,000 yang crystals. Do you dare?" The beautiful woman said confidently. "Okay." The young man pondered for less than a breath. Then he nodded and agreed. 200,000 yang crystals was not a small amount, but the young man firmly believed that his judgment was not wrong. "Then you continue. I'll wait." The beautiful woman crossed her arms in front of her chest and sat to the side, looking calm and unruffled. The young man said to Xiao Lingyu, "Fellow Taoist, according to the rules of this building, to awaken a cultivator above the 4th heavenly layer of longevity life, it costs 50,000 yang crystals. I don't know if fellow Taoist has prepared enough." "It doesn't matter. If he hasn't prepared enough, I'll pay for him." The beautiful woman said generously. "Hee, I have." Xiao Lingyu smiled and took out 45,000 yang crystals. To be honest, Xiao Lingyu didn't like the beautiful woman's unruly and capricious nature, but he felt that this young, awakening master's temperament was good. As for how many yang crystals he had to spend, Xiao Lingyu didn't care very much, as long as it could awaken him. He didn't have a clear idea of the number of yang crystals. Fellow Taoist has just arrived in the longevity world for more than 100 years, but you can take out so many yang crystals. You are not an ordinary person. The young man praised again, and then said, "The awakening method later is stronger. Fellow Taoist's soul may be injured. I can guarantee that the awakening method will succeed and that fellow Taoist's soul won't collapse, but I hope that fellow Taoist can endure the pain." Xiao Lingyu nodded and said, Fellow Taoist, just do your best. I have suffered a lot. Then, the awakening method began again. Xiao Lingyu released his mind's defenses, and the young man's divine sense invaded his knowledge sea again, and then divided into 8 strands. However, these 8 strands of divine sense turned into 8 soul force handprints, which surrounded Xiao Lingyu's golden soul bead and constantly slapped it. As soon as the awakening method began, it brought great tremors to Xiao Lingyu's soul, and waves of pain spread to the depths of his soul consciousness. This kind of pain was difficult for ordinary cultivators to endure, but Xiao Lingyu, who had experienced hundreds of battles and even detonated his soul, could easily endure it. The divine sense handprints gradually became stronger, and the pain also became more intense. Xiao Lingyu could clearly feel that when the divine sense handprints slapped him, his golden soul bead began to vibrate, and at the same time, it began to overflow with soul force. His soul force first spread to his knowledge sea, and then slowly came out of his body, resonating with the space of the longevity world, and gradually merged with it. More and more soul force accumulated in this room, and condensed into a strand of divine sense. This strand of divine sense belonged to Xiao Lingyu, and it gradually became stronger. At first, it was very weak, but it quickly became stronger. The hunchbacked old man frowned at first, then sighed and said, "Third young mistress, you have lost. How is this possible? He has only ascended for 100 years. How can there be such a strong fluctuation of divine sense?" The beautiful woman was dumbfounded and said in disbelief. Chapter 781. At this moment, Xiao Lingyu's soul had been recognized by the space-time of the world of immortals and could fully emerge from her body. Although the vast and vigorous divine sense fluctuations could not break out due to the restrictions placed in the room, they accumulated in the room and formed a huge pressure. Under this pressure, the beautiful woman felt her divine sense tremble and her body tremble. The stooped old man smashed his walking stick under his feet, and an even more powerful aura surged out of his body, protecting the beautiful woman. The beautiful woman felt better, but her face was still full of shock. She was already at the 4th heavenly layer of immortals. So what was the realm of the person who had just awakened? Xiao Lingyu and the young, awakening master meditated for a while, and then both opened their eyes. Xiao Lingyu asked, "How many yang crystals for a soul-nourishing pill?" The young man smiled and took out a soul-nourishing pill, saying, "I'll give you one for free." At this moment, the young man was sure that this cultivator who had just ascended for 100 years was at the peak of the 5th heavenly layer of immortals and was only one step away from the 6th heavenly layer. "Thank you." Xiao Lingyu took the soul-nourishing pill and sat down on a chair with soft cushions in the room. She took the pill and calmed down. Her soul had suffered heavy injuries when she woke up. If she only relied on herself, it would take a long time to recover. With the help of the soul-nourishing pill, her recovery would be faster. "Third miss, does our bet still count?" Although the young man also consumed a lot of energy, a faint smile hung on the corner of his mouth. "Of course it counts. A loss is a loss. Isn't it just 200,000 yang crystals? I, Sangji, am not a sore loser." The beautiful woman looked proud, but after a moment, she frowned and said to the stooped old man beside her, "Uncle Ta, lend me 120,000 yang crystals." The stooped old man called Uncle Ta paused and replied, "Third miss, you don't know. This old servant never carries yang crystals." Sangji, who appeared to be a 16-year-old girl, was obviously unhappy, but she did not blame Uncle Ta. Instead, she said to the young man, "I'll give you 80,000 yang crystals first. As for the remaining 120,000, I'll send someone to deliver it to you when I go back." The young man accepted the 80,000 pieces of yang crystals and said, "Third young lady, you don't have to take it too seriously. You don't need to return the rest, as long as third young lady doesn't say that Xiaoke's skills are not good enough in the future." I, Sangji, have always been a man of my word. The 120,000 sun crystals will definitely be delivered later. As for your skill, it still needs to be verified. With that, Sang Ji led Uncle Toa out of the room. The young awakening master shook his head and smiled bitterly. Then, he began to meditate. For hours after taking the soul-nurturing pill, Shaolin Yu felt that his soul had stabilized. The effects of the soul-nurturing pill had also completely dissipated. The injuries to his soul could only be slowly healed in the future. As soon as Shaolin Yu woke up, a woman in a palace dress entered the side room. The woman left behind a storage pouch and then left without saying a word. The young awakening master glanced at the storage pouch and put it away. The corners of his mouth curled up into a bitter smile. Many thanks for helping me wake up. I still have some trivial matters to attend to, so I won't disturb you any further. Shaolin Yu stood up and bid farewell. Wait a moment, the young man called out softly. When Shaolin Yu turned around in confusion, he continued, Fellow Taoist, have you joined any clans or teams? Shaolin Yu shook his head and said, No, what's wrong? The young man said, Fellow Taoist, you've just ascended not long ago. You still don't know much about the world of immortals. You should know that the world of immortals allows everyone to have an endless lifespan. In fact, it's not much different from the lower realms. It's survival of the fittest. Shaolin Yu asked, Fellow Taoist, do you have any advice for me? The young man shook his head and said, It's not advice. I just want to ask fellow Taoists to stay and become an awakening master. With fellow Taoist cultivation, it's still easy for you to awaken ordinary people who just ascended. The treatment of awakening master is extremely high. It's something that many cultivators at the fourth celestial layer of immortals and above yearn for even in their dreams. Shaolin Yu smiled and said, I prefer to be alone and unrestrained. The young man continued to explain, Awakening masters aren't restricted too much. After being hired by the Awakening Tower, you'll learn the awakening technique of the Awakening Tower. After studying and becoming proficient in it, you'll be on duty in shifts. Every 100 years, you'll only be on duty for 10 years. The rest of your time is up to you. As long as you don't divulge the secrets and secret techniques of the Awakening Tower, the Awakening Tower won't impose any restrictions on you. Shaolin Yu asked curiously, Such good treatment. So many cultivators yearn for it, even in their dreams. Fellow Taoist, how do you know that the head of the Awakening Tower will want me? The young man said confidently, The Awakening Tower doesn't want ordinary people, but it thirsts for knowledge of rare geniuses. I dare guarantee that fellow Taoist will be accepted. Shaolin Yu muttered to himself for a moment, then cupped his fists and said, Then I'll have to trouble fellow Taoists to recommend me. Having just arrived at the world of immortals, Shaolin Yu indeed needed a place to stay. If what the young cultivator said just now was true, this Awakening Tower was very suitable for him. It just so happens that the head steward is in the tower. I'll bring you to see him now. The young man immediately stood up, then brought Shaolin Yu out of the room. He didn't go downstairs. After walking a few steps, the young man stopped in front of the door of the room next door and knocked on the door. Come in. The door opened, and a slightly tired voice came out. The young man brought Shaolin Yu into the room. He appeared to be very careful and didn't even dare to breathe loudly. The structure of this room was exactly the same as the young man's room. At this moment, a middle-aged cultivator wearing a purple robe was sitting behind a desk. The middle-aged cultivator's face was a bit pale, and he was about the same as the young cultivator who helped Shaolin Yu wake up. It seemed that he was injured. Miling, what's the matter? The middle-aged cultivator asked with an indifferent expression. The young cultivator called Miling replied, My lord, this fellow Taoist is interested in joining our Awakening Tower, so I brought him here for you to take a look. The middle-aged cultivator made an "oh" sound, then looked at Shaolin Yu. A faint light shot out from his eyes. A moment later, the middle-aged cultivator said, He just woke up, and his cultivation is close to the 6th heavenly layer of immortals. It seems that he hasn't ascended for long. He's really good material. However, the Awakening Tower in Gourd City doesn't lack manpower. The middle-aged cultivator rubbed the bridge of his nose, then said, "Then let Yuan Qing leave. As for this awakening technique, you teach it to him." "Yes, my lord. Myling will do his best to teach him," Myling hurriedly replied. The middle-aged cultivator took out a palm-sized jade tablet and said to Xiaoling Yu, "Tell me your name." "Xiaoling Yu," Xiaoling Yu replied. The middle-aged cultivator stretched out a finger and made a few gestures on the jade tablet. Then he tossed the jade tablet over and said, "Be careful when you do things. Don't make any mistakes." "Yes." Xiaoling Yu took the jade tablet and nodded. At this moment, the jade tablet's originally smooth surface was engraved with a large Xiao character and two smaller Ling Yu characters. The middle-aged cultivator waved his hand and said, "Myling, bring this new brother Xiao to Yuanqing's room. Tell Yuanqing to come see me." Immediately, Myling brought Xiaoling Yu to the second floor and stopped in front of Ding Mao's room. Myling didn't knock and directly pushed open the door of Ding Mao's room. At this moment, there was no one in the room. Myling said to the old man, "Yuanqing, the Lord Steward invites you upstairs." The old man was puzzled, but he didn't ask and immediately went to the third floor. "I didn't expect that I would have to chase someone away when I came here." Xiaoling Yu smiled bitterly. This is the world of immortals. There's nothing strange about it. You don't have to blame yourself. Yuanqing hasn't improved for many years. Although he's older than me, he's too complacent and doesn't want to improve. It's only a matter of time before he's eliminated. Myling didn't mind. "I'm a bit curious. Fellow Taoist Myling is so eager to recommend me. I wonder." "Xiao Dao, you don't worry. I don't have any ulterior motives. It's just that there's a rule in the tower. If you recommend a cultivator with good qualifications and a clean background, the tower will give you a generous reward. That's why I'm so eager. As the saying goes, one doesn't get up early if there's no profit. However, the profit I'm after won't bring you any harm." Myling explained. "Then I'm being overly suspicious." Xiaoling Yu nodded. Then Myling began to teach Xiaoling Yu the awakening secret technique. Although this secret technique was a bit complicated and exquisite, it was similar to the Tao of forbidden formations. As long as one understood a few of the essence and studied it, ordinary cultivators would be able to master it in a short time. After all, Xiaoling Yu was an expert in the Tao of forbidden formations. Thus, he would be able to master the awakening secret technique much faster. Just as Myling was teaching Xiaoling Yu the awakening secret technique, the door to Ding Mao's room was pushed open again. The person who came in was the old man who had been expelled, Yuanqing. Yuanqing looked extremely angry. He stared at Myling and said angrily, "You ungrateful bastard. When you first came, if it weren't for my constant guidance, you would have been pushed out before you could even get a foothold. Today you used a dirty trick to drive me out." Myling sneered and said, "Come on. When did I not beg you to give me pointers? When did you not pretend to give me pointers and then blackmail me for a large sum of yang crystals? Moreover, it's fine if you don't want to improve, but you often deceive the guests, causing our awakening secret technique to be criticized outside. It's inevitable that you will be driven out." Fine. It's a small world. Let's wait and see," Yuanqing said angrily. "Don't give me that. With your little ability, what can you do to me when we meet in the future?" Myling said contemptuously. Although Myling looked young, he was an expert in the awakening secret technique on the third floor. It was obvious that his cultivation was much stronger than Yuanqing's. Yuanqing knew that he couldn't get the upper hand with his words today, so he glared at Xiaoling Yu again and left in a hurry. "You won't hold a grudge against me, right?" Xiaoling Yu said. Chapter 782. After Myling gave a few more pointers, he returned to the third floor. According to the usual practice of the Awakening God Tower, a newly arrived Awakening God Master would immediately work for 10 years after comprehending the Awakening God Essence. However, a normal Awakening God Master would need a period of time to study. Therefore, he would only cultivate in his own room for a few days or even a few months. Xiaoling Yu only took 2 days to master the Awakening God Essence. After that, he took out the jade slips that he had purchased earlier and read them one by one. Through the contents of these jade slips, Xiao Yu had a further understanding of the world of immortals. The world of immortals was also a boundless world. The spatial and temporal fluctuations were completely different from the God realm. Even an immortal realm expert would find it difficult to truly grasp the spatial fluctuations of the world of immortals, not to mention the more ethereal temporal fluctuations. These jade slips mention that the majority of the cultivators in the world of immortals were in the immortality realm. Above the immortality realm, there were two more realms, namely the nirvana realm and the extreme star realm. As for whether there were even stronger experts above the extreme star realm, that was unknown. The immortal realm had 9 heavenly layers. Each layer required a long period of accumulation to achieve a breakthrough. Generally, cultivators who ascended from the lower realm were below the 4th heavenly layer of immortals. Those with good aptitudes could ascend to the 3rd heavenly layer of immortals. Those with average aptitudes could only ascend to the 1st heavenly layer of immortals. For example, Xiao Yu, who ascended to the 5th heavenly layer of immortals, he could be called a rare genius. In fact, the reason why Xiao Yu could reach his current realm was because his cultivation method was too special. Before he had passed the world of immortals in the lower realm, he was already in the Chaos 10th Revolution creation realm. After that, he had dual cultivation with 2 immortal realm virgins, which increased his strength by a lot. After passing the immortal tribulation, his strength improved greatly, allowing him to reach the Chaos 10th Revolution creation realm. If it wasn't for the fact that he had only been in this realm for a short period of time, he would have already reached the Chaos 6th Revolution or even the 7th Revolution creation realm. On the other hand, Xiao Yu's cultivation of primal chaos origin force allowed his true strength to far surpass his cultivation level. As long as he could familiarize himself with the space-time of the immortal world and everyone's divine abilities, he would be able to easily deal with ordinary 7th heavenly layer immortal realm cultivators. This was his biggest advantage after losing the 2 primal chaos treasures. Once a cultivator completed the 9 heavenly layers of everlasting life, the soul of the everlasting immortal physique would undergo an even greater transformation. This transformation was the cultivation of the nirvana realm. Only by completing the cultivation of the nirvana realm would one be able to communicate with the world of immortals. Only then would one be able to truly possess great divine abilities and become a true expert of the world of immortals. Of course, every time a cultivator made a breakthrough, there would be great danger. It was the same in the world of immortals. 70 to 80% of the cultivators would fail to break through the nirvana realm from the 9th heavenly layer. Moreover, even if one managed to enter the nirvana realm, every step of the cultivation process would be filled with danger. If a cultivator didn't want to make progress and was content with the status quo and didn't want to take risks for the sake of becoming a true expert, they could stay in the everlasting realm and enjoy their endless lifespan. This point was different from the world of immortals and below. Therefore, in the world of immortals, more than 90% of the cultivators were in the world of immortals. Most of the cultivators' ultimate goal was to attain immortality. Now that they had achieved their goal, many cultivators wouldn't choose to forcefully break through the nirvana realm unless they were forced into a corner. The cultivation process of the nirvana realm, to put it bluntly, was the process of the body and soul constantly transforming. During this cultivation process, the cultivator would need to rely on the help of the cultivation technique to communicate with the world of immortals. The power of the universe's space-time would cleanse and transform their body and soul. The entire process was extremely difficult and dangerous. The nirvana realm was divided into 5 realms. They were respectively nirvana body, nirvana heart, nirvana soul, and nirvana realm. Without the guidance of a powerful cultivation technique, it was almost impossible for a cultivator to complete the 5 steps of the nirvana realm. Any cultivation technique could only provide a clear path of cultivation, but it couldn't guarantee whether the path was safe or not. all kinds of dangers still needed to be resolved by the cultivator themselves. Everyone relied on their own ability and luck. When a cultivator completed the Nirvana realm, they would reach the extreme star realm and become a true expert in the world of immortals. The terrifying thing about the extreme star realm experts was that their body, soul, and nascent soul could all harmonize with the space-time of the world of immortals. They were able to display all kinds of world-shaking divine abilities. And the symbol of the extreme star realm experts was that they could move the stars with just a thought. When they cultivated to the peak, not only could they borrow the power of the world of immortals, they could also mobilize the endless power of the distant stars in the world of immortals. The extreme star realm didn't have any clear division of realms. The number of cultivators who could cultivate to this realm was originally very few. Adding on the fact that each of them had outstanding innate talent, cultivated their own system, and each had their own unique abilities and characteristics, the extreme star realm experts only had battle power and not realms. Because the number of extreme star realm experts was too few, and they didn't come out often, the Jade Slip that Shaolin Yu purchased didn't have a detailed description. In fact, in the world of immortals, those who could reach the Nirvana realm were already considered experts. They were existences that the majority of the world of immortals looked up to, and the extreme star realm was an existence that most people couldn't even look up to. The Jade Slips were all purchased in the Gourd City. Of course, the majority of the Jade Slips introduced the Gourd Bay. The Gourd Bay was located at the southwest corner of the Immortals mainland. If one looked down from the sky, it looked like two different-sized, circular seas joined together. Its outer appearance resembled a gourd, hence the name. Among the two circular seas, the one closest to the mainland was called the Inner Sea of the Gourd Bay. The one facing the sea was called the Outer Sea of the Gourd Bay. Both the Inner Sea and the Outer Sea had a vast sea area and countless verdant pearl-like islands. In short, the Gourd Bay was a place with abundant cultivation resources. Even in the entire southwest region of the Immortals mainland, it could be considered a flourishing place. According to legend, the Gourd Bay was originally a part of the mainland. It was formed by an extremely powerful extreme star realm expert who plucked two stars from the sky and smashed them down. This legend had no basis to investigate. No one knew if it was true or false, but it also showed how terrifying the extreme star realm expert was. The cultivation of the Nirvana realm required an extremely brilliant and targeted technique to complement it. However, the immortal realm was not like this. In the world of immortals, the majority of the immortal realm cultivators only used one technique to cultivate. That was because this technique was very safe and reliable. The experience of countless predecessors proved that this technique was the most direct and also the most reliable. Everyone knew about this technique. It was to hunt those inland and oceanic vicious beasts, demonic beasts, or ferocious beasts, and absorb the energy from their life pearl to strengthen the cultivator's own realm. Of course, one could also use relatively special heavenly treasures as a substitute. For example, Shaolin Yu was currently at the peak of the 5th celestial layer, but if he wanted to advance to the 6th celestial layer, he would need to collect 6 pure yang life pearls and 6 pure moon pearls. Moreover, these life pearls must all come from demonic beasts of the 6th celestial layer. If the cultivator went out alone to collect them, it would be very difficult. After all, not everyone could challenge those who were stronger than them. Moreover, they would have to challenge those who were stronger than them multiple times. They would have to face opponents with different physiques and abilities. The majority of the cultivators relied on joining some big and small forces. They relied on the strength of a team to obtain the resources needed to advance. That was why there were very few lone cultivators in the world of immortals. There were also cultivators who relied on other people or other forces, clans, and shops to accumulate yang crystals. Afterwards, they would purchase the cultivation resources they needed to achieve a breakthrough in realm. For example, the Awakening Master in this Awakening God Tower and the receptionist in those restaurants, tea houses, and shops were the representatives of this type. Their accumulation was relatively slow, but it was safe and reliable. After all, the thing that the cultivators in the world of immortals lacked the most was time. The Jade Slip also introduced the contents of this gourd island in Gourd City. The Gourd Island was the largest island in the Gourd Bay that was closest to the immortals' mainland. It was the place where the experts in the inner sea of the Gourd Bay gathered. Because this island was only several tens of thousands of li away from the mainland, one could go straight to the inland and also see the ocean from afar. The cultivators waded through the ocean. All the materials they obtained would need to be transported to the mainland via the Gourd Island. The people from the mainland would use the Gourd Island as a springboard as the last supply station and then go deep into the ocean. Over time, this created the prosperity of the Gourd Island. If the Gourd Island was the heart of the Gourd Bay's inner sea, then the only large city on the Gourd Island, the Gourd City, would be the heart of the Gourd Island. Such an important Gourd Island and Gourd City naturally had experts from the great powers of the Immortals realm to control them. As for which great power it was, the Jade Slip didn't give a detailed introduction. However, the Jade Slip did explain one point. That was, there were two great clans in the Gourd City whose strength couldn't be underestimated. Apart from the City Lord's mansion, there were the two existences that couldn't be provoked the most in the Gourd City. They were respectively the Yun clan in the east of the city and the Sang clan in the west of the city. Sang Ji, who previously went to the third floor of the Awakening God Tower and woke Miling up, was precisely the third young lady of the Sang clan. As for the large golden ship that Xiao Lingyu encountered in the ocean, it was the Yun clan's ocean-going ship. If it weren't for the fact that Sang Ji had a strong background, she wouldn't have been able to have such an unruly personality and confidence. She wouldn't have been able to casually place a bet of 200,000 Yang crystals as a mere fourth celestial layer immortal. She wouldn't have been able to make the Awakening God Tower's expert, Miling, who had a similarly deep background, compromise. Another point worth mentioning was that the currency of the Immortals realm was Yang crystals. Just like the spirit stones of the cultivation world and the divine stones of the Immortals realm, the Immortals' various magic treasures, pills, and cultivation resources were all measured by Yang crystals. Yang crystals were the same as the divine stones of Heavenly Saint Island. They didn't contain rich mineral veins, but rather some special jade or other things that gradually formed after absorbing the energy released by the 9 blazing suns in the sky over the years. Cultivators could absorb the energy released by the 9 blazing suns in the sky to increase their cultivation. However, a cultivator could only rely on the energy within Yang crystals to reach the peak of a certain realm. They couldn't rely on it to break through. Chapter 783. As a Spirit Awakening Sorcerer, one's own realm and mastery of Spirit Awakening techniques were the most important, but experience was also not to be underestimated. Xiao Lingyu was at the peak of the 5th celestial layer of longevity. In terms of realm, there was absolutely no problem. As someone who excelled in the Tao of restriction formations, his understanding of Spirit Awakening formations had already reached a level where he had a thorough understanding. The only thing he lacked was experience, and this experience could only be accumulated by continuously awakening other cultivators. The cultivators who had entered his room at the beginning naturally became the targets of his experience. Fortunately, although these cultivators were very unlucky to have met a newbie and had to endure more pain than facing other Spirit Awakening sorcerers, they all walked out smoothly. Not a single one of them had their souls scattered. If such a thing really happened, the Spirit Awakening Tower would definitely pay compensation for it, and Xiao Lingyu would also have to pack up and leave. Of course, as long as one was completely focused and careful when using the Spirit Awakening technique, there would generally not be any problems. After accumulating experience for 10 days, Xiao Lingyu always gradually relaxed after awakening dozens of cultivators. He also became more proficient in using the Spirit Awakening technique. Then, he continuously used the Spirit Awakening technique like a machine. The feeling was just like the factory workers on Earth. Every day, They repeated the same process over and over again without getting tired of it. Then, they gradually became numb and bored. Fortunately, it was a rotation once every 100 years. Fortunately, each rotation only lasted for 10 years. Otherwise, no matter how good this job was, Xiaoling Yu would consider leaving. What Xiaoling Yu didn't expect was that less than a month after he became a spirit awakening sorcerer, he actually met an acquaintance. This acquaintance was none other than one of Xiaoling Yu's wives, Jiang Lanchang. "Why are you here?" After Jiang Lanchang came in, she was first stunned. After carefully looking at Xiaoling Yu's appearance, she was incomparably surprised. Xiaoling Yu was also extremely surprised. However, after being stunned for a moment, he smiled and said, "Your husband knew you would come, so I was waiting here." Jiang Lanchang rolled his eyes and asked curiously, "Don't talk nonsense. Tell me, why are you here?" The reason behind this is truly hard to explain with just a few words. However, all these aren't important. What's important is that not long after I arrived at the lifelong realm, I managed to find you. Xiaoling Yu appeared to be very happy. She couldn't help but secretly praise herself for choosing the Awakening God Tower this time. It's not just about finding me. Finding me is equivalent to finding everyone else. Jiang Lanchang sat down and continued, "Maybe it's because we ascended too close to each other. After we ascended, we weren't too far away from each other. Then, we encountered the Yun family's hunting ship and were brought onto the ship. Then, we came to Gourd City on Gourd Island." Xiaoling Yu was even more surprised. "You're saying that they're also in Gourd City?" Jiang Lanchang nodded and said, "That's right. After we were brought to Gourd City, we rested in the Yun family for more than 10 days. Then, we were brought here today to wake up. Now, the other sisters, Xiao Bing and the Devourer of Heaven, should be waking up in other rooms." Xiaoling Yu clapped and said, "That's great. This will save your husband a lot of trouble and time to find you. The heavens really have opened their eyes." Jiang Lanchang snorted and said, "What's so good about it?" "That abominable young master of the Yun family said that we would be protected if we joined the Yun family and would receive support from the Yun family in terms of cultivation resources. In the end, he actually made us become servants of their family. What's so good about that?" Xiaoling Yu said, "Then you should leave the Yun family." Jiang Lanchang smiled bitterly and said, "How can it be so easy to leave? The Yun family's influence is huge. It's easy to enter, but difficult to leave. Not to mention other things, they brought us back. We're newcomers and don't have a single yang crystal on us. How can we pay them back?" Xiaoling Yu said, "You don't have it, but your husband does. You can't be their maidservants, right?" Jiang Lanchang's eyes lit up and said, "That's right. The Yin family's second steward is outside. Go and talk to him." Xiaoling Yu waved his hand and said, "There's no hurry. Your husband will wake you up first." Jiang Lanchang moved back and said, "You became a spirit-waking master not long after you ascended. Your skills shouldn't be that good, right?" Xiaoling Yu glared and said, "You actually don't believe in your husband's skills? Have you forgotten how your husband made you want to die?" Jiang Lanchang's face reddened and he scolded, "Shameless guy." Xiaoling Yu didn't do it himself to wake Jiang Lanchang up. Instead, he directly gave her a spirit-waking pill. With Jiang Lanchang's cultivation level, the spirit-waking pill was enough to wake her up. After she woke up, Jiang Lanchang brought Xiaoling Yu out of Ding Mao's room and went to the hall on the first floor. Taking the spirit-waking pill didn't cause much pain, and it wouldn't damage the soul at all. However, it took a long time, so when Jiang Lanchang and Xiaoling Yu reached the first floor, the other cultivators had already woken up. Jiang Lanyue, Anya, Miaoying, Yueru, Qing Xian, Ling Xiao Bing, and the Devourer of Heaven were all waiting in the hall on the first floor. However, they never thought that Xiaoling Yu would accompany Jiang Lanchang downstairs. "All right, we're all here. Everyone, follow me back." A slightly plump middle-aged cultivator lazily called out to everyone. "Second steward, wait a moment," Jiang Lanchang said in a low voice. The Yin clan's second steward, that slightly plump middle-aged cultivator, turned around and frowned. His eyebrows were less than an inch long, and he said unhappily, "What's wrong?" "This is our husband. Since we found our husband, we won't stay in the Yun clan any longer." Jiang Lanchong said righteously, "This one is Shaoling Yu? What a joke." Without waiting for Shaoling Yu to finish speaking, the plump man opened his mouth and said with a gloomy expression, "What kind of place do you think the Yun clan is? Do you think you can come and go as you please? Let's not talk about anything else. Do you know how many yang crystals the Yun clan spent to wake you up?" "This one will repay all the yang crystals spent," Shaoling Yu replied. At this moment, everyone who was close to Shaoling Yu stood behind him. The second steward swayed his fat body and walked shakily in front of Shaoling Yu. He said, "Are you the awakening master of the Awakening God Tower?" The awakening master of the Awakening God Tower had the same attire and was very easy to recognize. "What? Do you think you can cause trouble for the Yun clan just because you have the Awakening God Tower as your backer?" The second steward sneered. "I'm not looking for trouble. I'm just discussing the matter," Shaoling Yu said in a neither servile nor overbearing manner. "Who do you think you are? What qualifications do you have to discuss matters with the Yun clan?" The second steward was not polite and did not buy it. Instead, he said with a strong sense of disdain, "May I ask, second steward, what do you need to discuss matters with the Yun clan? Second steward is so strong and unyielding. You should need something very powerful, right?" Shaoling Yu asked with a smile. "Haha." The cultivators on the first floor's hall laughed loudly. "You're courting death." The second steward was enraged. The fat on his face trembled. He waved his arm and looked like he was going to slap Shaoling Yu's face. The Yun clan was a rich and powerful family in Gourd City. The entire clan was extremely powerful and naturally had many experts. This second steward of the Yun clan was an expert at the seventh celestial layer of longevity. The second steward sent out his palm in anger. Although it was hurried and his palm strength was insufficient, it was extremely fast. Moreover, it carried a powerful aura. The second steward had been in Gourd City for many years. From Shaoling Yu's attire, he could tell that Shaoling Yu was just an ordinary awakening spirit cultivator. Her realm was definitely below his. Therefore, he was determined to win this palm. In his opinion, the other party would definitely not be able to dodge. Indeed, the other party did not dodge. However, his palm stopped 2 inches away from the other party's smiling face. Crack! First, it was the crisp sound of bones breaking. Immediately after, the second steward felt a piercing pain from his wrist that spread throughout his body. The second steward was shocked to find that his wrist had been tightly grabbed by the other party's hand. The strength of the other party's hand was so great that he could not bear it. "Let go!" Just as the second steward was about to raise his other arm to attack, a dignified voice came from upstairs. The shocked cultivators on the first floor all looked toward the stairs at the same time. At this moment, the Awakening Spirit Tower's Lord Steward, who was supposed to be in a wing room on the 3rd floor, slowly walked down. His face was still pale, as if he had not recovered from a serious illness. No matter what, he was still a member of the Awakening Spirit Tower. Shaoling Yu resentfully released his palm and temporarily gave up on teaching this fatty a lesson. "Second steward, even if you are the second steward of the Yun family, you have gone too far by hitting and scolding Awakening Spirit Cultivator in the Awakening Spirit Tower." The Lord Steward walked closer and said in a calm tone, "As the Lord Steward of Gourd City's Awakening Spirit Tower, this seemingly injured middle-aged cultivator had the temperament and aura of a powerful cultivator. His strength was definitely much, much stronger than the second steward. Is your Awakening Spirit Tower trying to protect your own? Although I made the first move, he still injured me." The second housekeeper raised his drooping hand that was like a frosted eggplant and complained, "You attacked first and suffered a loss, yet you still want a reason. Your Yun family should not have such a cowardly steward." The Lord Steward's tone was still cold. "All right, let's not talk about this for now. However, your Awakening Spirit Cultivator insists that these maidservants of the Yun family are his wives. What should we do?" The second steward continued, "Damn fatty, don't speak without thinking. When did we become your Yun family's maidservants? Jiang Lanchong, who always spoke without thinking, asked unhappily. We only received some favors from you. We didn't sign a contract to sell ourselves to you. Miaoing echoed. We will repay what we owe you today. Chapter 784. This has nothing to do with the Awakening God Tower. I don't care. You can do whatever you want after you leave the tower, the middle-aged manager said calmly. Sir, that's not appropriate. A woman's voice came from outside the awakening of the God's Tower. Her voice sounded a little angry. A moment later, a woman in a blue warrior's outfit walked in with her hands behind her back. She had a cold expression on her face. Miss, why are you here? The fat second manager quickly went up and greeted her respectfully. I happened to pass by and heard someone outside saying that the Awakening God Tower is bullying the Yun family. How could I not come take a look? The woman didn't even look at the second manager as she spoke. The woman who just came in looked like a young girl, but her posture was generous and calm. She also had the temperament of an expert. Needless to say, everyone knew that she was the daughter of a wealthy family. When she walked into the room and stood still, Xiao Yu saw that she was holding a leather whip that was coiled into a circle behind her back. When she saw the leather whip, Xiao Yu subconsciously felt that this woman had some violent tendencies. The Yin family's manager may be a little disappointing, but we can train him ourselves. Lord Liu, you don't have to worry about it. As for these cultivators who just ascended, they clearly said that they wanted to become a member of the Yun family. Now that they've woken up, they've been deceived by despicable people and want to go back on their words. The Yun family will never allow this, the eldest daughter of the Yun family said firmly. Woman, why are you so unreasonable? We've already said that we'll return everything that the Yun family has done for us. We just ascended and won't be of much use to the Yun family. Why you have to force us? Jiang Lanchong said angrily. To be honest, it's not a big deal, but the Yun family has worked hard in this gorge city for many years. We have our own dignity. How can we allow you to play with us like this? The eldest daughter of the Yun family replied. For some prestigious families, face and dignity were often more important than their lives. Tisk, isn't it just for face? Is it that honorable to squabble with weaklings like us who just ascended? Don't tell me that the Yun family is constantly increasing its strength just to show off in front of us newcomers. Jiang Lanchang's mouth was still very sharp, and her words were filled with sarcasm and ridicule. If we can't even deal with you, how can the Yun family establish itself in Gorge City? If even you so-called newcomers can casually trample on my Yun family's dignity, who will give my Yun family any face in the future? Yun family's eldest, Miss, also spoke with conviction. I don't care about your Yun family's face or what's inside. I just want eldest young Miss to understand one thing. Your Yin family wants face, and our Spirit Awakening Tower also wants face. You guys caused trouble here and even attacked our Spirit Awakening Tower's Spirit Awakening Tower. That's because you guys attacked our Spirit Awakening Tower first. Seeing as how the Yin family and our Awakening God Tower have been cooperating well for so many years, I won't go to the City Lord's mansion to speak. Eldest Miss, you should bring your second steward outside to argue. Our Spirit Awakening Tower still needs to do business, so we won't entertain eldest Mississippi. The middle-aged steward waved his hand impatiently. Yin family's eldest Miss glared angrily. Blue veins appeared on the back of her hands that gripped the whip. However, a moment later, those blue veins were covered by her smooth, white skin. She smiled faintly and said, Since Sir mentioned the City Lord's mansion, then my Yun family will go to the City Lord's mansion to argue. Let's go. Yin family's eldest Miss led the second steward out of the Spirit Awakening Tower. The middle-aged steward leisurely returned upstairs. Judging from his expression, he seemed to be certain that even Yin family's eldest Miss wouldn't dare to make a big fuss in the Spirit Awakening Tower. Why are you leaving just like that? You don't even want the yang crystals? Jiang Lanchong said with a smile. Don't be happy too early. This matter isn't over yet, Qing Xian said with a frown. Didn't you hear her say that the Yun family is going to the City Lord's mansion to seek redress? Yuer's expression was somewhat disdainful. We'll deal with whatever comes our way. What's there to be afraid of? Miaoying said, even more directly. Xiao Yu felt a headache coming on. His wives were all prideful. Apart from himself, they wouldn't submit to anyone else. Even if the heavens wanted to make things difficult for them, they would still dare to rush up and poke a big hole in the heavens. In fact, Xiao Yu also knew that the reason why they were so fearless was because of their firm belief in him. They believed that even if the heavens collapsed, their husband would be able to support them in a safe corner. The Yin family obviously wouldn't let this matter go. With Xiao Yu's current strength, he simply couldn't face them. However, since he was able to find his friends and family in such a short time after ascending, it was worth it even if he offended the Yin family. But now, he didn't have the Primal Chaos Manual or the Demon Sealing Pagoda. How was he going to arrange for his friends and family? Even if he allowed them to stay by his side, the Dingmao room that he owned wouldn't be able to fit so many people. Furthermore, the Dingmao room was a place where the Awakening God Tower did business. He definitely wouldn't allow all of the Awakening God Tower's friends and family to squeeze in. Just as Xiao Yu was in a dilemma, Miling also came down from upstairs. He patted Xiao Yu's shoulder and said, I have a residence in the city. Although it's not big, it's still a place to stay. Brother Xiao, if you don't mind, you can arrange for everyone to stay there first. Fellow Taoist Miling is really considerate. I was worried about this matter, and you came to help me in my hour of need, Xiao Yu said meaningfully. Brother Xiao, please don't misunderstand. Lord Steward informed me and asked me to come down and help. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known that there was such a matter downstairs, Miling explained. Then, thank you very much, Lord Steward and Miling. Xiao Yu cupped his fists and thanked them. It's not a big deal. Brother Xiao, you don't have to be so courteous. Let's go. I'll bring you over to take a look, Miling said generously. Walking on the streets of Gourd City, Miling whispered to Xiao Yu, You were introduced by me. If you cause trouble, I'll be in trouble too. Brother Xiao, you have to be careful when you're on Gourd Island in the future. Don't offend people that you shouldn't offend or can't afford to offend. The Awakening God Tower has more freedom. The tower doesn't give us many restrictions, but similarly, if anything happens outside the tower, the Awakening God Tower won't interfere. At most, they'll find another person to replace you. Thank you for your reminder, brother me. Xiao Yu nodded sincerely. Xiao Yu could guess that the reason the Lord Steward let Miling come down from the third floor was probably because he was introduced to the Awakening God Tower by Miling. There shouldn't be any other deeper intentions. As for the Yin clan saying that they want to go to the City Lord's mansion, I don't think they're that stupid. There's a strict ban on private fights in the city. Just now, in the Awakening God Tower, it was their second steward who attacked you first. They violated the ban first. Even if their clan is big, the City Lord's mansion won't be able to help them. They definitely won't go and ask for trouble. Miling first comforted him, then said worriedly, However, the Yin clan has been in Gourd City for many years. It can be said that they have deep roots. There are countless experts in the clan, and they even have a Nirvana realm expert. Not to mention ordinary immortal realm cultivators. Even the other big and small factions on Gourd Island rarely dare to fight with them. The Awakening God Tower isn't afraid of the Yun clan looking for trouble. They don't have the guts, but Brother Xiao, you have to be careful in the future. Today, Brother Xiao also saw that the Yun clan didn't care much about the ban on fighting in the city. Under Miling's instructions and guidance, it took less than half an hour for everyone to arrive at a maple forest in the north of the city, just like the Awakening God Tower. This maple forest in the north of the city was actually a residential area. There were many small courtyards here, which are the private residences of the city's long-term residents. The fiery red maple leaves connected together, rising and falling with the wind, like a warm sea of fire. The scenery here isn't bad, Anya said with satisfaction. Let's buy a house here in the future. Jiang Lanchong said. The houses here aren't cheap. Look at the smallest courtyard, which is only 5 or 6 feet wide, but it costs nearly 1,000,000 yang crystals to buy it. And that's only if a cultivator is willing to sell it. Myling said, "It doesn't matter. Our husband is very capable. No matter where he goes, he's always rich." Jiang Lanchong didn't care. Myling wanted to say that this was the world of immortals, so it was different, but he smiled and didn't dampen the mood. After walking for a while, Myling led everyone to a small courtyard. The courtyard door seemed to be made of steel, and there was a palm print on it. Myling pressed his left palm on the palm print, then released his power and chanted an incantation, and the big iron door slowly opened. There were 7 or 8 rooms in the courtyard, which looked like a courtyard house. There was a big tree in the middle, but this tree almost occupied the entire space of the courtyard. My humble house is a bit shabby. Everyone, please bear with it for a while." Myling looked at the dissatisfied faces of the women and said with a dry smile, "How many yang crystals is your house worth?" Jiang Lanchong asked curiously. "It cost 3,000,000 yang crystals to buy it." Myling replied, "Then for a spirit awakening expert like Brother Me, how many years does it take to earn 3,000,000 yang crystals?" Jiang Lanchong continued to ask, If it's a normal shift, it would take 5,000,000 years." Myling paused for a moment before replying. "You only earn half a yang crystal a year on average?" Jiang Lanchong said in surprise. Myling was even more embarrassed. For a spirit awakening expert, accumulating wealth was indeed slow, but the advantage was that it was stable. Many cultivators who went out on adventures didn't earn much, and it was very dangerous. As the saying goes, if you always wander in Jianghu, how could you not get killed? However, cultivators in the world of immortals didn't have to worry about their lifespans. The most they had was time. For cultivators who didn't have great ambitions, living a stable life was undoubtedly the best choice. Chapter 785. When everyone went to choose their own rooms, Myling patted Xiao Lingyu's shoulder and said, "Although Brother Xiao has a lot of beauties and enjoys a lot of luck with women, once we reach the world of immortals, Brother Xiao will have a long way to go. Not to mention other things, if Brother Xiao is responsible for the cultivation of so many wives, it will be a huge expense. Just relying on the income from the Awakening God Tower, you won't be able to pay for this expense. If they are willing to stay at their current level and don't want to make progress, Brother Xiao won't need to buy the materials they need to break through. But I think none of these sisters-in-law are willing to be mediocre," Xiao Lingyu said with a relaxed expression. "After all, we haven't been in the world of immortals for long. The most important thing is to gain a firm foothold first. There's no need to think too much. As the saying goes, when the boat reaches the bridge, everything will be straight. Instead of worrying about the future, it's better to be down to earth and do the things in front of us well first." Myling's eyes revealed a look of admiration and said, "Brother Xiao is indeed an extraordinary person. If I had so many beauties waiting for me to provide for them, I'm afraid I would want to bang my head against the wall and die." Xiao Lingyu only smiled. In fact, he was also very troubled in his heart. After all, he came from Earth. In his subconscious mind, he believed that a man should shoulder the burden of a family. He didn't ask for riches and honor, but at least he should let his wife and children live without worries. In the world of immortals, there was no need to worry about food and clothing. But everyone's daily needs for cultivation were actually the same as food and clothing in the secular world. He understood his wives very well. He knew that they were indeed unwilling to be mediocre. They would even more so not let their husband, who had once looked down on the world and killed many people, become a mediocre person. However, rice had to be eaten one bite at a time. Things also had to be done step by step. Rushing for success would often result in failure on the verge of success. Brother Xiao, you can rest assured, the bigger the clan, the more they pay attention to their behavior. Even if the Yun clan still has the intention to make things difficult for you, they definitely won't openly come to this courtyard to look for trouble. Moreover, this courtyard was originally the property of the City Lord's Mansion. The City Lord's Mansion sold it to us. The City Lord's Mansion has long issued a strict order that no cultivator or power is allowed to trespass into the private residence of other cultivators in the city. It is precisely because those who live in these courtyards will receive the protection of the city lord's mansion that the prices of these courtyards are so high, and there are countless cultivators fighting to buy them. After everyone had settled down, Miling patted Xiao Lingyu's shoulder and comforted her. "Let's go, we have to return to the Awakening God Tower. You've just become a spirit awakening master, so you can't be half-hearted about your 10 years of duty." Xiao Lingyu instructed her wives and friends to stay in the courtyard and recuperate first. She also gave them the jade slips she had purchased before she left with Miling. After he closed the iron door of the courtyard, Miling said, "This courtyard has a formation and restrictions set up by the rebirth realm experts of the city governor's estate. Once it's attacked, the city guards will rush over as quickly as possible. Over the years, there have been many cultivators that have attacked the private residences of other cultivators, yet none of them met a good end. Can they come out from inside?" Xiao Lingyu asked. "Regardless of whether it's from the inside or outside, only the owner of the courtyard can open the door." Miling replied. Only then did Xiao Lingyu feel at ease. Truthfully speaking, he didn't feel that the Yun clan would go to war and risk offending the city governor's estate to attack this courtyard. He was just worried that his wives and friends would be unable to endure the loneliness and run out on their own. As the saying goes, only with a goal comes motivation. Xiao Lingyu had a goal that wasn't too big, yet wasn't too small, and it was to give his wives and friends a stable place to stay. A courtyard like the one that Miling possessed was naturally the first choice. After all, Xiao Lingyu wasn't a top expert that looked down upon the world now. If he was able to take root under the protection of the city governor's estate, then it would at least be much easier for him. However, just by working at the Awakening God Tower, it was already good enough that he could barely get by. There was no need for him to have extravagant hopes of buying a courtyard. Thus, with motivation, Xiao Lingyu still had to think of other ways to make a living. Xiao Lingyu could also become an Awakening God expert like Miling, thereby increasing the remuneration he could receive from the Awakening God Tower. However, this wasn't easy. He had to first reach the 7th firmament of Longevity Realm. Miling had advanced to the 7th firmament of Longevity Realm. Furthermore, he had never failed in awakening cultivators. Furthermore, he had always been on good terms with the steward, which was why he was promoted. 10 years wasn't a long time, especially for an immortal realm expert like Xiao Lingyu. It was even more so in the blink of an eye. Just as Miling expected, the Yin clan didn't go to the city governor's estate to complain, nor did they go to the courtyard to cause trouble. These 10 years passed very peacefully. Xiao Lingyu was almost tired of mechanically awakening other cultivators. With 90 years of rest, Ding Mao's room was also given to other awakening masters. 10 years of work, even if the remuneration was 100 years, was only 20 yang crystals. Previously, Zhang Lanchong had laughed at Miling for only receiving half a yang crystal a year on average. However, Xiao Lingyu only received 1/5 of a yang crystal a year. In fact, this treatment was already much better than that of the cultivators who worked as waiters in restaurants or shops. The most important thing was that while awakening other cultivators, he could also slowly improve his own soul realm. This could be considered a special kind of remuneration. Miling had already taken his rest 2 years ago. However, he didn't leave the Awakening God Tower. Instead, he cultivated in his own room. When Xiao Lingyu's rest came, he went down to the 3rd floor and headed to the courtyard in the northern part of the city with Xiao Lingyu. What is the fastest way to earn yang crystals? Recommend one. As they walked, Xiao Lingyu asked Miling. There are many ways. The fastest way is to go out of the city and rob people, Miling replied. Xiao Lingyu frowned. You must be joking. Miling patted Xiao Lingyu's shoulder affectionately and said, Actually, in order to buy this courtyard, I went out a few times before. Although I almost lost my life once, I was lucky. Going out of the city to earn yang crystals really requires good luck. Otherwise, something will happen sooner or later. Moreover, you just offended the Yun clan not long ago. It's better to wait a while before going out. If you're targeted by them, you might be caught before you even leave Gourd Island. Is there no way to avoid their eyes and leave the city? Xiao Lingyu asked. It depends on luck. There are many powerful formations and restrictions under Gourd Island. It's the same on the city walls. Whether it's Earth escape or flying, it's not easy for immortal realm cultivators to leave the city. However, there are many gates in Gourd Island. The Yin clan won't be watching all the gates at all times. Moreover, you can change your appearance, so it won't be easy for the Yin clan to target you. Actually, we feel that it's very troublesome here. The Yin clan might not take us seriously. Miling's eyes suddenly lit up and said, I have an idea. Even if you're targeted by the Yin clan, they can't do anything to you. Oh, let's hear it. Xiao Lingyu asked curiously. The Yin clan and the Sang clan have always regarded each other as a thorn in their flesh. Every once in a while, they would recruit a group of cultivators to go out to sea to hunt. You can go to the Sang clan to sign up, then follow the Sang clan's group out of the city. This way, the Yin clan won't be able to do anything to you. Although the two clans have hated each other for many years, they have always lived in harmony. They rarely go to war, and even more so, the Yin clan won't risk fighting with the Sang clan just because you are in the Sang clan's group. Miling smiled proudly and said, Going out to sea with the Sang clan, although the majority of the harvest belongs to the Sang clan, not only is the reward not low, it's also very safe. Brother Xiao has just arrived in the world of immortals. In any case, I have nothing to do, so I can accompany Brother Xiao to sea to earn some yang crystals. To tell you the truth, in order to buy that residence, I borrowed some yang crystals from the steward. It's not good to keep delaying it, so I've already considered going out to sea. How many yang crystals can you earn from going out to sea under normal circumstances? Xiao Lingyu nodded and asked. If you're lucky, you can get a few hundred. When Miling saw that Xiao Lingyu's expression didn't change, he continued, Many a little makes a mickle. After all, we're not experts, so we have to be patient. Xiao Lingyu first followed Miling back to the residence and spent 3 months with his wife and friends. Then, she went with Miling to the Sang clan's courtyard to sign up. The Sang clan only had one requirement when recruiting people to go out to sea, and that was that they had to be at least at the 5th celestial layer of immortals. However, what surprised Miling and Xiao Lingyu was that the Sang clan's third young Miss Sang Ji was among the cultivators who were going out to sea. What was even more embarrassing was that all the cultivators who came to sign up had to be approved by the third young miss before they could be recruited. When Sang Ji saw Xiao Lingyu and Miling, she circled around them a few times with a mocking expression. Forget it, let's go. Miling felt that there was no hope for the two of them, so he pulled Xiao Lingyu and wanted to leave. What? Are you two men afraid of going out to sea with me? Sang Ji's voice slowly traveled over. Weren't you going to reject us? Miling turned around and asked curiously. Why would I reject you? It's rare that you're in my hands, so why would I reject you? You won 200,000 yang crystals from me last time, so I have to win it back. Sang Ji said confidently as she rubbed her nose. As long as you don't secretly make things difficult for us. Miling said straightforwardly. Don't worry, the Sang clan has always been open and above board. We're not like those despicable people from the Yin clan. Sang Ji said proudly. Cough, cough. The stooped Uncle Tuo coughed twice, reminding his third young miss to be careful with her words. After all, this was a common occasion. Miling didn't take it to heart. Although the Sang clan and the Yin clan hadn't had any major conflict for many years, it was still very common for the two clans to bully each other openly and secretly. What made Miling feel even more at ease was that Sang Ji was going out to sea with the group, and even that Uncle Ta was accompanying them. Chapter 786. There were a total of 32 cultivators in the Sang clan's fleet this time. Apart from Sang Ji and Uncle Ta, there were only 5 true experts from the Sang clan. The rest of the cultivators were all recruited. The group of cultivators left Gourd City through the West Gate. Then, everyone leaped into the air and flew towards the south of Gourd Island. After flying for 2 hours, everyone arrived at the southern pier. Sang Ji walked to the shore. With a wave of her sleeve, a black light suddenly flew out. The black light flew towards the surface of the sea. In an instant, it transformed into a large ship that looked like it was made of black iron. Although this large ship did not look as resplendent as the Yun clan's golden ship, it was about the same size. It was about 8,000 feet long and at least 3,000 feet wide. It also looked heavy and sturdy. The large ship was clearly a magic treasure of high quality, but it also had a mast and a sail. The tall and wide sail seemed to be made of iron, and it was actually able to flutter with the wind. On top of it, there was a large Sang character engraved. "Let's board the ship." As Sang Ji spoke, she took the lead and flew towards the large ship. A moment later, she landed on the deck of the large ship. Uncle Tua also flew onto the large ship. Xiaoling Yu, Miling, and the other cultivators followed closely behind. When all the cultivators had boarded the large ship, Sang Ji had already formed a hand seal and sent it into the disc-shaped rudder at the front of the ship. The rudder rotated gently. Then, like an arrow leaving the bow, the large ship cut across the blue sea and sped away. "Wah!" Sang Ji shouted excitedly. Xiaoling Yu and the other crew members had just reached the deck. Before they could steady themselves, the large ship suddenly sped forward. They couldn't help but stagger and bump into each other. Everyone couldn't help but curse in their hearts. Tuo Bo stood very steadily, but his old face that was filled with wrinkles also revealed a helpless, bitter smile. It was obvious that this was Sang Ji's first time out at sea. She wasn't even familiar with controlling this large ship of hers. The big ship gradually sailed into the depths of the Calabash Bay's inner sea. Islands and smaller ships brushed past the big ship. Sang Ji's driving skills were nothing to be proud of. He always made sudden sharp turns, making everyone dizzy. Even if they grabbed onto something on the boat, it was difficult to stabilize their bodies. Bang! The ship crashed into a small island with a dull thud. The quality of this large ship naturally far surpassed the reefs of the small island. Coupled with its extreme speed, it pierced through the small island like a sharp sword. There wasn't the slightest trace of damage to the hull of the ship, but its forward speed had slowed down slightly. Everyone was complaining incessantly, but Sang Ji was having fun. Uncle Tuo could only shake his head. Uncle Tuo was strong enough to endure such turbulence. However, the other cultivators all felt their blood boil. Those with weaker cultivations even gradually turned pale. Crashing into the small island wasn't a big deal. In this area of the sea near Calabash Island, there were countless ships of various sizes. Some of them were returning home, while others had just set sail. Sang Ji didn't slow down. Instead, she kept accelerating. Coupled with the fact that this was her first time out at sea, it was inevitable that she would crash into other ships. This black iron ship was huge and sturdy. It was like a giant moving at extreme speed. Regardless of whether it was a head-on collision or a rear-end chase, all the ships that were hit by it were reduced to smithereens. It was almost as if it was running amok. The cultivators on the ships that were smashed were either killed or injured. However, they could only admit that they were unlucky to have been hit by the Sang family's ship. The inner and outer seas of Calabash Bay weren't like Calabash City, where the city lord's office controlled the entire city. On the sea, everyone could only rely on their own abilities. Sang Ji didn't seem to have any goal in mind. She steered the ship and kept accelerating forward. It was as if she didn't come out to hunt sea beasts, but to have fun. She only wanted to experience the thrill of the ship moving at extreme speed. This ship was moving at full speed. It was much faster than the Yun family's golden ship that Xiaoling Yu rode on last time. The Yun family ship wasn't slow either. It was just that it didn't accelerate as fast as this black iron ship. In only 10 years, the black iron ship had already entered the depths of Calabash Bay's inner seas. They weren't far from the outer seas. Uncle Tuo finally couldn't take it anymore. He walked to the ship's helm and said, "Third young miss, we should stop to hunt. If we continue like this, we'll rush out of the inner seas and reach the outer seas." The cultivators on Calabash Island knew that the outer seas of Calabash Bay weren't a place that could be entered as one wished. There were many powerful sea beasts in the outer seas. Moreover, there were many powerful hurricanes that wreaked havoc. There were even some powerful experts from the realm of immortals. It wasn't that the Sang family didn't dare to go to the outer seas. However, every time they went to the outer seas, they had to prepare carefully and bring along many experts from the family. What's the point of going to the inner seas? The inner seas are almost empty. Big Brother said that if we want to have a bigger harvest, we have to go to the outer seas. Although Sang Ji said this, she still gradually slowed down the ship. After 10 years of practice, her driving skills had improved a lot. The only thing she lacked now was experience in hunting. Third, young miss, if you want to have a bigger harvest, this old servant knows of a good place in the inner seas. Uncle Tuaw said with a smile. That's right. Big Brother also said that Uncle Tuaw used to be our Sang family's most experienced sea hunter. He definitely knows a lot of good places. Come, take the helm. Third young miss gave Uncle Tuaw a lot of face. While praising him, she gave up the helm. Third young miss had been at the helm for 10 years. Although she enjoyed it to her heart's content, she was now a bit tired. Otherwise, she wouldn't have given up the helm so easily. There was an iron rule in the Sang family that only direct descendants of the Sang family could steer the ship. However, Uncle Tuaw was an exception. Not only was he not a direct descendant of the Sang family, he wasn't even a cultivator with the surname Sang. However, he was one of the most trusted cultivators of the Sang family. Uncle Tuo's driving skills were naturally many times better than Sang Ji's. Under his control, the ship's speed wasn't slow at all, but it was unusually stable. After spending almost 3 months, the large ship sailed into a sea area that was occupied by countless islands under Tuaw Bo's control. The fog in this sea was rather heavy, but it didn't restrict their spiritual sense. It only affected their vision slightly. As soon as they entered the sea, they could hear the angry roars of sea beasts. Outside the sea, there were almost no hunting ships. Could this be the Lost Islands? Myling looked around on the deck and said in surprise. Hearing Myling's voice, the crew on the deck all frowned. Most of these crew members were experienced at sea. They seemed to be very afraid of the Lost Islands that Myling spoke of. Everyone began to discuss. Sang Ji also asked Uncle Tuaw curiously, "Is this the Lost Islands?" Uncle Tuaw nodded, saying, "That's right. It is the Lost Islands." Sang Ji said in surprise, "I heard from Big Brother that the Lost Islands is a sea with no exit. This place seems to be covered by a naturally formed Lost Islands formation. Large ships and cultivators who enter this place will quickly lose their sense of direction. It will be very difficult to find a way out. Why did you bring us here?" Uncle Tuaw smiled, saying, "Young miss, could it be that you're afraid?" Sang Ji stared blankly for a moment, then patted her chest, saying, "My Sang clan has never had anyone who is timid and afraid of trouble." After saying this, she said in a low voice, "Although I'm not afraid, we still have to take responsibility for these recruited crew members." Uncle Tuaw smiled again, saying, "Third young miss, if you want to obtain a rich harvest, you naturally have to take risks. Other places are safe, but they've been plundered countless times. Even if you've been out at sea for 100 years, you won't have much harvest. Third young miss, don't worry. Since I brought you here, I could definitely have the confidence to bring you out." Sangji thought for a moment and didn't say anything else. "Is the Lost Islands very dangerous?" Xiaoling Yu asked Myling in a low voice. Myling said with a bitter face, "If I knew we were going to come to the Lost Islands, I definitely wouldn't have come. In the past, I've gone out to sea many times, but only once did I almost lose my life. At that time, our ship almost sailed into the Lost Islands. At that time, the fog in the Lost Maze Islands overflowed and spread hundreds of kilometers around the vast sea. We all thought that we had mistakenly entered the Lost Maze Islands. Fortunately, we didn't really enter the Lost Maze Islands and only circled around the periphery. If not for the fog dissipating in time, we might have lost our lives in the mouths of the sea beasts that rushed out of the Lost Islands. Entering the Lost Islands, not only will we lose our way, We will also be attacked by countless powerful sea beasts. The sea beasts in the Lost Islands usually won't go out easily. That time, they might have gone out because of the fog. Then we'll have to be more careful. Xiaoling Yu said with narrowed eyes. That's natural. However, this time, we might be able to make a huge profit. With an experienced and powerful expert like Uncle Tuo keeping watch, we won't have to worry too much. Myling's nervous expression gradually turned into anticipation. After all, worrying was useless. The ship had already sailed into the Lost Islands. That's strange. Our spiritual sense isn't restricted at all. How can we lose our way? Xiaoling Yu was puzzled. This Lost Islands is like a mystery to the cultivators of Gourd Bay. No cultivator can explain the strange situation here. They can only speculate that there's a natural formation here. Myling said with a smile. Roar. Just as Myling finished speaking, the roar of a sea beast suddenly sounded. Then, a sea snake with a waist thicker than a bucket revealed half of its body on the surface of the sea. It swayed its body in the fog. The sea snake opened its bloody mouth. Its two venomous fangs were like two sharp swords. Its two triangular eyes also shone with a strange green light. Just as everyone was shocked, the sea snake's tail rose from the water and fiercely slapped the bow of the ship. Chapter 787. Gold light, green light, blue light, red light, yellow light. The 5 colors instantly intertwined and shot into the air. In the blink of an eye, they turned into a 5-colored light sword and ruthlessly slashed at the sea snake's tail. With a pu sound, the 5-colored light sword tore through the scales on the sea snake's tail, causing a terrifying wound to appear on the sea snake's tail. Moreover, blood spurted out from the wound. Roar. The sea snake was in pain and actually let out a roar that sounded like a dragon's roar. Other than Xiaoling Yu and Sang Ji, the cultivators on the ship were all seasoned cultivators. After a brief moment of shock, they successively attacked. More than 20 rays of divine light whizzed out. Before the sea snake could escape, it was hit by these divine lights, following which, its huge body crashed into the water with a loud bang. Instantly, the seawater around the ship turned blood red. A thick smell of blood floated in the misty white fog. The battle started very suddenly, but it ended very quickly as well. That sea snake was only at the 7th celestial layer of Longevity Realm. How could it withstand the attacks of so many sailors and hunters? In less than a breath's time, it had already lost its life. After its corpse fell into the water, it gradually floated to the surface. The sea snake's tail was still twitching slightly. Streams of blood spurted out from the wounds on its body. Third young mistress, fish it up and take out its life jewel. Uncle Tuo reminded Sangji. Oh. Sangji's reaction was slightly slower. After regaining her senses, Sangji waved her hand and threw out a large net. She caught the sea snake on the deck of the ship. Its life jewel is in its head. Uncle Tuo pointed at the sea snake's head and said. Sangji put away the large net and took out a sharp sword. Sangji let out a delicate shout. The sharp sword easily split open the sea snake's head. A pearl wrapped in light blue fog floated out. Sangji appeared to be very happy. She used a jade box that she had prepared beforehand to keep the bead. Since the snake meat is still fresh, let's have a piece, Uncle Tuo said to everyone. All the crew members, including Myling, seemed very happy. They all stepped forward, took out their weapons, and cut off pieces of the fat snake meat. Brother Xiao, don't just stand there. Besides yang crystals and life jewels, this meat is the best cultivation material that we crew can get, Myling said to Xiaoling Yu. The great sea serpent's body was huge. Even though everyone had cut a piece of it, it only reduced the size of its body by less than a third. The remaining part was kept in the storage magic treasure by Sangji under Uncle Tuo's reminder. In the next 20 years of time, the large ship had always been controlled by Tuo Bo as it moved between the islands of the Lost Trace Islands. Sea beasts that weren't weak were killed one after another. and their life pearls fell into Sang-Ji's storage magic treasure one after another. Although the Lost Islands was a forbidden area for ordinary cultivators, there were no sea beasts that were too strong. The strongest sea beast was only at the 9th heavenly layer. Even a 9th heavenly layer sea beast would not be able to defeat so many cultivators on the Sang clan's black iron ship. Moreover, there was an expert like Uncle Tuaw on the ship. Uncle Tuaw did not participate in any battles other than manning the helm and protecting Sang-Ji. It was as if the sea beasts here were not worth his time. Even when 2 crew members died in the battle with the 9th heavenly layer sea beast, Uncle Tuaw was only manning the helm and protecting Sang-Ji. He ignored the sea beast attacks. Fortunately, the other 5 cultivators of the Sang clan were of the metal, wood, water, fire, and earth attributes. They were very good at combining forces. When they attacked together, they could display a strength that was not weaker than a 9th heavenly layer longevity expert. Otherwise, the cultivators on the ship would have a hard time dealing with a 9th heavenly layer longevity sea beast. In order to ensure Sang-Ji's safety on her first voyage, the Sang clan naturally made sufficient preparations. They even sent Uncle Tuaw, who had not left the Gourd City for many years. It was clear how much the Sang clan head loved and cared for his youngest daughter. The harvest from this voyage was already very impressive, and it was time to return. Although Sang-Ji was not satisfied and wanted to expand the results of the battle so that she would have the ability to show off in front of the tribe when she returned, she really wanted to stay for a while more. However, Tuaw Bo, who was obedient to her, insisted on leaving. Uncle Tuaw seemed to be a servant of the Sang clan. However, even the willful Sang-Ji knew that Uncle Tuaw was not a servant of the Sang clan. Moreover, he had a very high status in the Sang clan. Even her own father had to be polite to this hunchbacked old man. She naturally did not dare to contradict Uncle Tuaw. She could only let Uncle Tuaw sail the ship away. "Brother Xiao, can you still tell the direction?" Miling asked Xiaoling Yu. "Yes, we are sailing toward the east," Xiaoling Yu said with certainty. "Haha, I feel the same as Brother Xiao. I feel that the ship is sailing towards the east. However, our feelings are most likely wrong." Miling shook his head and smiled. "I can't feel the slightest trace of a formation here. There's also nothing special about the white fog here," Xiaoling Yu said with a frown. "That is what is strange about this place. Let alone us. I heard that even Nirvana realm cultivators would not be able to find anything strange here. However, they would not be able to tell the direction when they come in, just like us." Miling said. "Then how did he find the way out?" Xiaoling Yu asked as she pointed at Uncle Tuaw, who had his back facing everyone. "How would I know?" Miling shrugged and said, "But who cares? We have a very good harvest this time. I estimate that we will be able to get at least 3,000 yang crystals." 3,000 yang crystals. Xiaoling Yu would have to work 150 shifts to get it. If he calculated it this way, it would naturally be a considerable amount of income. However, Xiaoling Yu had just arrived at the world of immortals, and he had already obtained 80,000 yang crystals. This made him feel that a few hundred or a few thousand yang crystals were nothing. He also felt that even if he took the risk to go out to sea, it would not be a way to quickly increase his wealth. However, other than going out to sea on a large ship, he could not think of any other way to quickly become rich. He was no longer a powerful cultivator. He did not have the primal chaos code or the demon sealing pagoda that could guarantee his safety. It seemed that he could only take one step at a time in the world of immortals. In addition, he had offended the Yun family in Gourd City. He could only be careful. Xiaoling Yu also thought that he could take his wives and friends away from Gourd Island. This way, he would not have to worry about the Yun family's revenge. However, leaving Gourd Island was not easy. Other places might not be safe. If he took his wives and friends away, he might encounter even more trouble. Roar! Just as Xiaoling Yu was thinking about his future, a sudden roar shook the sky. The sound waves that made one's heart palpitate actually set off stormy waves on the surface of the sea. It even shook the ship. Then, rolling dark clouds covered the sky. In a breath's time, they gathered in the sky above the ship. As they rolled and surged, there was also a terrifying sound of thunder. Streaks of lightning flashed with a frightening and glaring brilliance. Waves of powerful aura, accompanied by gusts of hurricanes, rushed over. Uncle Tuaw, who had been calm and composed, actually became gloomy. The ship was still braving the wind and breaking the waves at full speed. However, the dark clouds above their heads were still following them like a shadow. Torrential rain poured down crazily. The raindrops made pitter-patter sounds on the deck. All the crew members, including Xiaoling Yu, became nervous. It was obvious that the ship had been targeted by an abnormally powerful sea beast. In Xiaoling Yu's opinion, the powerful aura that was constantly surging over here was much stronger than the ninth heaven immortal moon otter that he had encountered on the island. The sea beast that had targeted the ship was most likely in existence that had surpassed the immortal realm and was in the nirvana realm. If not for Uncle Ta, even if all the cultivators on the ship fought with their lives on the line, they would definitely not be a match for the nirvana realm sea beast. The sea beast had yet to show itself. It had been chasing the ship and using its powerful aura to disturb everyone. Everyone suddenly felt that they were like a group of rabbits that had been targeted by a falcon. They had originally come a hunt, but they had become the prey instead. Not long after, there was an additional wave of powerful aura that was surging over. Moreover, it was equally powerful. Oh no, we might be targeted by two Nirvana realm sea beasts at the same time. Just as Myling said this, another wave of powerful aura locked onto the ship. It's over. Myling, who had always been optimistic, had a look of despair on his face. However, soon after, the three waves of powerful aura turned into four. For Nirvana realm, sea beasts surrounded them at the same time. Even if Uncle Toa was also a Nirvana realm powerhouse, he might not be able to protect everyone as they charged out of the bewildering Maze Island safely. Without waiting for Uncle Toa to drive the ship out of the bewildering Maze Islands, the four sea beasts that had been chasing for a long time finally revealed themselves. The four sea beasts looked exactly the same. They were four gigantic crabs. However, they were different from ordinary sea crabs. When they surfaced from the water, they were like four small islands cast from steel. However, they had two thick and long whiskers that were like steel whips. What was even stranger was that they had a circle of eyes that constantly released blue light around their bodies. They separated into four different directions and surrounded the ship. Waves of powerful aura had already suppressed the ship to the point that it was unable to move an inch. Although Sang Ji wasn't strong, her courage wasn't small. Even when facing such a dangerous situation, her body was still as straight as a pencil. However, her jade-like hand that was tightly holding onto the corner of the hunchback's clothes exposed a weakness in her heart. Xiaoling Yu wasn't strong either. However, he had experienced countless battles on his way from the cultivation world to the world of immortals. He was much calmer than ordinary cultivators in the face of danger. After stopping the ship, the four strange sea crabs moved their two whiskers at the same time and swept towards the ship. The five Sang clan guards grouped together and used the five elements formation to block the sea crab's attack. Uncle Tuaw still stood beside Sangji. The other cultivators had no choice but to group together and defend against the sea crab's attack. Banging sounds continuously came from the ship. The 8 whiskers that were like steel whips whipped the deck of the ship. Chapter 788. Before the cultivators who fell into the sea could jump back onto the deck, they were tied up by the 8 whiskers that were like steel whips. What was shocking was that the tied-up crew members were then sent into the mouths of the 4 sea crabs. They did not even have the chance to scream. The cultivators who were still standing on the deck were all deathly pale, their eyes filled with despair. If there were only 1 or 2 Nirvana realm sea beasts, Uncle Toal and the other crew members might be able to escape with their lives. However, there was almost no hope now. All of you, hide in the cabin. Uncle Tuo's roar was still very clear in the storm. The frightened crew members hid in the cabin one after another, but they were still very nervous as they looked at the ladder that led to the deck. Soon after, everyone discovered that the cabin was rapidly shrinking. It was originally very spacious, but it was gradually becoming crowded. The entire ship should be shrinking, but during this process, it was still constantly shaking. It could be seen that the four sea crabs' attack did not stop. They really did not know how Uncle Tual was going to deal with the four Nirvana realm sea beasts. Not long after, the violently shaking ship began to slowly speed up again. Looking from the outside, the ship was wrapped in a ring of black light. The four sea crabs were constantly using all kinds of divine abilities to attack the ring of black light. However, the defensive power of the black light was too shocking. Although it was constantly shaking, there were no signs of it collapsing. At the helm of the ship, Sang-Ji was under the guidance of Uncle Ta. He was constantly forming all kinds of seals and sending them into the helm. The ship was constantly accelerating as it moved forward in the stormy sea. It looked swaying, but it was not going to capsize. Uncle Ta was guiding Sang-Ji's route as he stared at the four sea crabs outside. The black circle of light persisted for an entire 2 hours, but in the end, it was still broken through. When the four sea crabs that were in hot pursuit waved their steel whip-like whiskers to attack, Ta Bo suddenly stomped his feet and actually managed to stabilize the ship that was about to collapse. The powerful aura that was released from his body shook away all 8 whiskers. Another ring of black light enveloped the ship. The attacks of the four sea crabs were blocked, and the ship continued to move forward. However, at this moment, Uncle Tuo's face had become somewhat pale. His aged body finally began to tremble. It seemed that the seemingly simple exertion of strength just now had actually exhausted him quite a bit. Since Uncle Ta dared to sail the ship into the Lost Trace Islands, he naturally had the confidence to bring everyone away. Even though some of the crew members had already died, Uncle Tua did not care about their lives. He was only here to protect Sang-Ji and to ensure that Sang-Ji could return safely from this trip. The sacrifice of the other cultivators had nothing to do with him. On one hand, Uncle Tua was confident in his own strength. On the other hand, he knew that the ship's defenses would not be easily broken through. However, a round trip of the ship required a lot of yang crystals, and at this time, a powerful defensive barrier had been activated, causing the ship's energy consumption rate to increase by a lot. The harvest of this trip was almost gone. After the black ring of light was broken by the four sea crabs 8 times, the ship finally sailed out of the Lost Trace Islands waters. However, the four sea crabs were still chasing after them. Their continuous attacks caused the ship to be unable to increase its speed. Everyone was still in a dangerous situation. Xiao Yu and the other cultivators in the ship's cabin spent a period of extremely anxious days. They did not know that the ship had already sailed out of the Lost Trace Islands waters. After waiting for a long time, the ship suddenly stopped. The cabin began to gradually expand until it returned to its original appearance. The crew members felt that the ship was unusually stable and did not sway anymore. They left the cabin one after another and went to the deck. There was only Sang-Ji on the deck. She stood alone at the helm, trembling. "Where's Uncle Ta?" a crew member asked. Sang-Ji turned around with a face full of lingering fear. She said with a trembling voice, "In order to buy time for us to escape, he fought 4 sea beasts alone. I don't know how he is now." After hearing Sang-Ji's answer, most of the crew members were secretly glad that they had escaped a calamity. Only a few of them were worried about Uncle Ta. "Don't worry, Uncle Tua is very strong. Even if he couldn't defeat those 4 sea beasts, he should be able to escape." The kind-hearted Myling comforted them. But he was already exhausted at that time. Sang-Ji's eyes were already filled with tears. Although the Sang family's 3rd young miss was unruly and willful, she was not a cruel person. At the very least, she was still very concerned about the people close to her. Everyone did not know how to comfort her and could only remain silent. "No, we have to go back and find Uncle Ta," Sang-Ji said after being stunned for a while. "Absolutely not. Most of the remaining crew members said in unison. The only ones who did not say anything were Xiaoling Yu and the 5 Sang family experts. Even Miling felt that it was impossible. We have sailed too far away from the Mystic Islands. Uncle Tuo might have already escaped. If we go back and bump into those 4C beasts again, wouldn't we be seeking death? That's right. Uncle Tuo covered our escape. Even if something bad happened to him, at least he achieved his goal. If we go back and throw away our lives, wouldn't we be letting down his kind intentions? The crew members all spoke out with a strong sense of righteousness. Indeed, even from Xiaoling Yu's point of view, there was no point in going back now. A battle between experts would not last long. The outcome of the battle between Uncle Tuo and the 4C beasts had already been decided. Uncle Tuo had either died in battle or escaped. If they went back now, they would not be able to find Uncle Tuo. Instead, it was very likely that they would bump into those 4C beasts again. However, Xiaoling Yu had a trace of doubt. Under such circumstances, Uncle Tuo actually chose to stay behind and defend against the 4C beasts, giving everyone a chance to escape. Under normal circumstances, the cultivators would most likely choose to escape on their own. With Uncle Tuo's strength, he should be able to escape. Even if he brought Sangji along, it should not be too difficult. Could it be that I am too narrow-minded? Or perhaps I underestimated Uncle Tuo's loyalty to the Sang family. Or perhaps Uncle Tuo is trying to make up for his mistake of bringing everyone to the Mystic Islands. Xiaoling Yu mocked herself in her heart. If you're not going, then I'll go alone. If you're afraid of death, then get off the ship. Sangji stubbornly said. We can get off the ship, but according to the usual practice, if you want us to get off the ship midway, you'll have to pay us in advance, as well as pay us for the return trip. That's right. It's not easy to get a free ride now. We'll have to wait for a long time in the vicinity before we can find a ship to return home. Most importantly, this place is close to the outer seas. There are very few ships that pass by. Moreover, if we stay here for a long time, we might encounter powerful sea beasts from the outer seas. Third young mistress, your Sang family's actions will be criticized. Everyone began to discuss again. Isn't it just young crystals? I'll give them to you. Sangji's tears finally fell from her eyes. However, the stubborn her soon discovered that although the yang crystals she brought with her were not completely used up by the ship, it was far from enough to pay the crew's commission and return trip expenses. Moreover, if she gave all her yang crystals to the crew, the ship would have no energy to support it. Naturally, they could forget about going to the Lost Trace Islands, and even returning to Gourd Island would be a problem. Everyone was waiting for Sangji to pay, but Sangji was unable to do so. However, Sangji's young mistress' temper flared up again. Coupled with her worry for Uncle Tuo's safety, she steeled herself and said, If you want money, wait until I find Uncle Tuo. Then, Sangji started the ship and steered it forward. The crew grew anxious. While protesting, they rushed to the helm. The 5 experts from the Sang family stood in front of Sangji. However, they had not expected such a situation to occur and would not attack the crew right from the start. As a result, the dozen or so crew members were able to break through their defenses in an instant. The 5 experts were all extremely loyal. They were afraid that the crew members would harm Sangji, who was only at the 4th heavenly layer of longevity. Naturally, they attacked one after another. Unfortunately, the 5 experts of the Sang family could no longer form a formation. They were separated by the crew members, and each of them was facing 2 or even 3 times their number. The scene immediately became chaotic. Even though Miling and Xiaoling Yu were relatively calm and did not attack, the 5 Sang family experts were completely forced into a passive position. As for Sangji, she was practically incapable of fighting. After all, the crew members she recruited were all at least at the 5th heavenly layer of longevity. There was no lack of 6th or 7th heavenly layer experts among them. The 5 experts of the Sang clan were unable to form a formation. Their only advantage was that they had an expert at the 8th celestial layer of longevity realm. If you don't stop, don't blame me for being merciless. The eighth heavenly layer expert from the Sang family was furious. His voice shook everyone's ears. "We can't stop. Once the 5 of them form a formation, we'll lose our chance to attack." One of the crew members shouted. Indeed, once the 5 experts of the Sang family formed a formation, they would have the strength of a 9th heavenly layer longevity. Even if the other dozen or so crew members joined forces, they would still be defeated. The chaotic battle began again. Even though the 8th heavenly layer expert was furious, he could only protect Sang-ji tightly. He was unable to use any techniques to his heart's content. The other 4 experts of the Sang family were all at the 7th heavenly layer. They could not hold on for long. Moreover, under the control of the crew members, it was difficult for them to join forces. Seeing the chaotic battle on the deck, Xiao Lingyu frowned. "Brother Xiao, you're at the 5th heavenly layer, and I'm only at the 7th heavenly layer. It's best if we don't help either of us, so as to avoid future troubles," Miling reminded. "If I help the Sang family now, they might be able to help me if I need their help in the future," Xiao Lingyu said meaningfully. Chapter 789. Xiao Lingyu wasn't just thinking about the Sang clan helping him deal with the Yun clan. He also thought of many other things. For example, if he didn't do anything this time, the Sang clan wouldn't bring him along the next time they set sail. Just as the eldest daughter of the Yun clan had said, a clan like the Yun clan cared a lot about their reputation. They had lost face at the awakened God Pavilion, and it was hard to guarantee that they wouldn't try to regain their dignity elsewhere. Apart from the Sang clan ships, it would be difficult to find any other ships in Gourd Bay that dared to take him out to sea. That would undoubtedly mean one less way to earn yang crystals. If he helped Sang-ji this time, even if he didn't gain the trust of the Sang clan, he would at least leave a good impression on them. In the future, they would bring him out to sea more often and even give him more yang crystals. After all, this wasn't the God realm, and he wasn't a peak expert who could shake the world. For the sake of his wives and friends who were still weak, he had to be more calculative and take more risks. After weighing the pros and cons, Xiao Lingyu made his move under Miling's astonished gaze. Although he was only at the peak of the 5th heavenly layer, he was still at the middle stage of the 10th cycle chaotic creation realm. He wasn't any weaker than someone at the 7th heavenly layer. This could be seen from the fact that he was able to defeat the Yun clan's second steward. First, he formed a barrier with his chaos origin power to protect himself. Then he wrapped his hands in primal chaos true fire. Xiao Lingyu charged into the chaotic battlefield, attacking with his fists and legs. Every cultivator who was hit by him spat out blood and retreated in defeat. Xiao Lingyu's physical strength was already strong, and coupled with the might of the primal chaos true fire, these sailors who were at most at the 7th heavenly layer had no way of resisting. If he used his full strength, Xiao Lingyu could fight against someone at the 8th heavenly layer. This was the true strength he had after so many years of awakening. When Miling saw this, he hesitated for a moment. Then, he made up his mind and joined the fray. Naturally, he would help Xiao Lingyu. The situation was first balanced, then gradually reversed. Finally, the sailors were completely suppressed. However, 2 of the 5 Sang family guards who tried their best to resist had already been killed mercilessly. Their corpses were thrown into the ocean. The other 3 guards, including the 8th celestial layer longevity master, were all injured. Xiao Lingyu still had a sense of propriety when he attacked. He only injured the crew members and did not kill them. The crew members were all enraged and did not show any mercy. Even though Xiao Lingyu's defense was not weak, there were still a few wounds on her body. Although he was covered in blood, his clothes were tattered, and he looked very miserable. In reality, he had only suffered some superficial wounds. Just as the situation was turning around, what no one expected was that Tuo Bo actually flew over from afar and landed firmly on the deck of the ship. Uncle Tuo was also covered in wounds. His hair, which had been tied up with a headband, was now scattered across his shoulders. He looked at the bloodstains on the deck and saw that 2 of the Sang family guards were missing. Sang-ji was trembling uncontrollably, and Uncle Tuo was clearly in a bad condition. His face revealed a sinister expression. Of the crew members recruited by the Sang family, apart from Xiaolingyu and Meiling, there were only 8 left. Moreover, almost all of them had lost their ability to fight. The 8th Heavenly Layer Sang family guard walked up to Uncle Tuo and whispered a few words. The corner of Taobo's mouth twitched a few times, and his eyes narrowed. This old man, who originally looked amiable, was actually surging with killing intent at this moment. All of you deserve to die. Uncle Tuo did not waste any words. As soon as he finished speaking, a faint golden fiery orange appeared in his palm. The strange thing was that after the fire orange flower trembled, it turned into 8 flowers. Uncle Tuo flicked his 5 fingers, and the 8 faint golden fiery oranges shot out together. In an instant, they shot towards the 8 crew members like sharp arrows. Immediately, the bodies of the 8 crew members were ignited by the faint golden flames, and their bodies quickly melted. Feeling the burning pain all over their bodies, feeling the loss of their life force, and feeling the threat of death, the crew members all let out miserable cries. Xiaolingyu's eyebrows knitted together again, but he did not say anything. Meiling was secretly rejoicing. Fortunately, he and Xiaolingyu had chosen to help the Sang family. Otherwise, even if they had remained neutral, Uncle Tuo would not have treated them kindly when he returned. The bodies of the 8 crew members were burned to ashes, and in just a few moments, their bodies and souls had all been destroyed. Xiaolingyu felt that if Uncle Tuo had used the faint golden flames to deal with him, he would not have been able to avoid being hit. Moreover, the might of the faint golden flames was clearly much stronger than his own primal chaos true fire. An immortal realm cultivator was simply too weak in front of a nirvana realm cultivator. If not for the huge difference in strength, no immortal realm cultivator would be willing to risk his life to break through to the nirvana realm. After the 8 crew members were destroyed, Uncle Tuo's complexion gradually improved. He then looked towards Meiling and Xiaolingyu. Being stared at by Uncle Tuo, Meiling could not help but take a step back. Xiaolingyu, however, stood firmly in his original position. On behalf of the Sang family, this old man thanks the 2 of you for your righteous assistance at this critical moment. The Sang family will definitely repay you generously for this matter. Our Sang family has always been clear about gratitude and grudges. Uncle Tuo cupped his fists and bowed, speaking extremely politely. Xiaolingyu and Meiling both returned the greeting, saying that it was only natural. After the repeated battles, everyone was injured. Naturally, they would first recuperate in the cabin. The Sang family cultivators were indeed not stingy. Xiaolingyu and Meiling both received a high-quality healing pill from Uncle Tuo. Sang-ji was only slightly frightened and did not suffer any substantial injuries. After calming herself down for a few days, she once again steered the ship towards Gourd Island. After being frightened and feeling the danger outside, what a girl like Sang-ji wanted most was to return home. The ship traveled at full speed for 8 years before finally reaching Gourd Island. Sang-ji was not as excited as she was when they first came out. As they neared Gourd Island, she had the ship slowed down to avoid crashing into any other islands or passing ships. Very soon, the Gourd Island was already in sight, but a large golden ship was approaching. The golden ship was slightly larger than the black iron ship, and its entire body shone with golden light. It did not take much to tell that it was the Yun family's ship. The Yun clan's golden ship came closer and stopped 10 zhang away from the Sang clan's black iron ship, slowly sailing towards Gourd Island. I heard that it was third Miss first time out at sea. I didn't believe it at first, but I didn't expect the rumors to be true. An embroidered-robed young master stood at the helm of the ship and greeted her with a smile. That embroidered-robed young master was naturally the young master of the Yun family. Although his status was similar to Sang-ji's, his cultivation was much higher than Sang-ji's. Sang-ji was not in a good mood. Moreover, due to the rumors of her clan, she had never liked the Yun family. Even though the Yun family's embroidered-robed young master was extraordinarily handsome, She did not have the slightest favorable impression of him. As a result, she only snorted and did not reply. The Yin family's embroidered-robed young master did not feel awkward. He maintained a smile on his face and said, "Third miss, you must have gained a lot this time out at sea, right? How come I don't see any crew members?" Sang Ji remained silent, as if she was completely focused on steering the ship. The Yin family's embroidered-robed young master continued, "It is an honor to be able to return with third miss this time. However, compared to the 3 life pearls of 9th Heaven Longevity Sea Beasts and 20 life pearls of 8th Heaven Longevity Sea Beasts, third miss must have gained a lot, right?" Sang Ji had always been unruly and willful, and naturally had a stubborn personality. She hated it when others showed off in front of her. In the end, she could not help but say, "What does your Yin family's harvest have to do with me? Do we have to inform your Yin family of our harvest this time out at sea?" "Ha!" The Yin family's embroidered-robed young master laughed and said, "Looking at third Mrs. Temper, you must have gained very little. Ha ha, that's understandable. After all, this is third Miss' first time out at sea." Sang Ji could not take it anymore. She said, "How do you know that we gained very little?" The Yin family's embroidered-robed young master replied, "Third miss, don't deny it. You didn't even see a single crew member on your ship. If I'm not wrong, those crew members must have lost their lives at sea, right? Although the inner seas are much more peaceful than the outer seas, there are still occasional big troubles. You must have encountered big trouble." Sang Ji rolled her eyes and said unhappily, "You think too highly of yourself." At this moment, the ships on both sides had already reached the shore. The Yin family's crew members filed out and then took to the sky in formation, flying towards Gourd City. However, after the Yin family's embroidered-robed young master put away his golden ship, he led a few Yin family guards who were clearly not weak and waited by the shore, staring at the Sang family's ship. Sang Ji was so angry that the roots of her teeth were itching, but she could not do anything about it. Xiaoling Yu, Miling, and the 3 Sang family guards flew to the shore one after another. Uncle Tuo was the last to leave the cabin. Sang Ji also flew to the shore, and with a wave of his sleeve, put away the black metal ship. "Just as I expected, the crew members have all died at sea, huh?" The Yin family's embroidered-robed young master laughed loudly. Xiaoling Yu looked at the Yin family's embroidered-robed young master and found him to be somewhat familiar. Upon closer inspection, she realized that this person looked very similar to the one she had met before, but they were not the same person. When the Yin family's guards heard their young master's words, they all laughed along. Xiaoling Yu and Miling did not feel anything. After all, the other party's mockery was not directed at them, but the 3 Yin family guards were extremely angry. Uncle Tuo returned to his servant appearance and only stood silently beside Sang Ji, not saying a word. It was not that the Yin family's young master did not know that Uncle Tuo was an expert, but he was not afraid because the Yin family also had experts. As the Yin family's young master, there was no need for him to give face to a servant from an enemy family, and there was also no need for him to worry too much. After all, Gourd Island was right beneath his feet. "Since you know that this is my first time out at sea, then don't show off here. You're clearly a 4-legged worm. Just because you put 2 horns on your head, you think you're a true dragon?" After replying, Sang Ji led everyone into the air. Chapter 790. Sang Ji first looked at Xiaoling Yu, then sneered, "What a joke. Yin and Mo, your Yin family thinks too highly of yourselves. You can act all high and mighty in your Yin family, but this isn't your Yin family's courtyard. We're not your Yin family's servants. You'd better step aside." "So you're saying that your Sang family isn't going to hand him over?" The young master called Yin Mo asked with a straight face. "A good dog doesn't block the way." Sang Ji replied straightforwardly. "You." Yin Mo was so angry that he immediately charged forward. However, when he saw that the stooped Uncle Tuo had already taken a step forward, he rationally stopped. "Oomph, Let's wait and see. Yun Mo retreated to the front of the Yun family's experts. So what if we run and see? Sang Ji seemed to have a sharp tongue. At least in front of the Yun family, his words were sharp. Yun Mo pointed at Shaoling Yu and said, "Since you dare to offend my Yun family, do you dare to step forward now?" Childish. Sang Ji mocked. If you're so courageous and unyielding, then don't bully others just because you have more people. Don't use your family's background to show off. If you have the ability, then spar with him alone. Do you dare? Yun Mo laughed loudly and said, "Why wouldn't I dare? Today, I'll teach him a lesson by myself. I'm just afraid that he won't dare to step out and will hide under your Sang family's tree like a coward." Shaoling Yu, since he's so sincere, shouldn't you give him face? Sang Ji said to Shaoling Yu. In fact, on the way back, Sang Ji had already learned from Uncle Ta that Shaoling Yu was indeed at the 5th celestial layer of longevity, but she had the strength of the 8th celestial layer of longevity. Moreover, when Shaoling Yu fought with the crew on the deck of the ship, Sang Ji had already seen it. It was precisely because he knew that Shaoling Yu had the strength of the 8th celestial layer of longevity that Sang Ji used words to lure Yun Mo to challenge Shaoling Yu. Many cultivators with some status in Gourd City knew that Yun Mo was the 3rd young master of the Yun family. He relied on his powerful family background and his excellent cultivation talent. He was arrogant and looked down on everyone. Yun Mo hadn't been cultivating for long, but he only used a mere 100,000 years to cultivate from the 3rd celestial layer of longevity when he was born to the 6th celestial layer of longevity. This cultivation speed could be said to be terrifying even if he had a large amount of cultivation resources. It was also why he was recognized as the #1 cultivation genius in Gourd City. However, what everyone didn't expect was that until now, Yun Mo had only reached the 7th celestial layer of longevity, and the name of a genius no longer existed. Everyone felt that his improvement back then wasn't because of his own comprehension and hard work, but because he relied on the Yun family's solid foundation. Yun Mo first went through many years to reach the 7th celestial layer of longevity, and then he climbed up the 7th celestial layer of longevity for countless years. Until now, there had been no news of him breaking through to the 8th celestial layer of longevity. Perhaps it was because he had been suppressing his cultivation all these years, causing Yun Mo's temper to become more and more irritable, and his state of mind fluctuated greatly. "I'm not interested. It's meaningless to fight based on personal feelings," Shaoling Yu replied indifferently. In Shaoling Yu's opinion, this fight naturally wasn't something that could be fought just because he wanted to. The most important thing was that once he fought, if he won, who could guarantee that the Yun family's guards wouldn't intervene? Who could guarantee that the Sang family's people would definitely stand up for him? Sang Ji's enthusiasm was most likely because he wanted to see Yun Mo make a fool of himself. He just wanted to have some fun. It wasn't that he was timid, but that he didn't want to give others a chance to kill him before he was strong enough. Did you hear that? He doesn't want to fight with you one-on-one. You're no longer the #1 cultivation genius in Gourd City. Sang Ji mocked. Yun Mo's expression became even uglier, and he immediately said to Shaoling Yu, "Coward, a real man doesn't shrink from a fight. You're such a coward, and you'll be a slave for the rest of your life." Could it be that you were born to be a slave, or that your parents were both slaves, and that's why they raised you, a bastard slave? These words were a little harsh, and even Sang Ji felt that it was too much. Even Uncle Ta, whose expression hadn't changed, frowned. "Ha!" Shaoling Yu laughed, but it was a little sinister. What wrong did his parents do to raise him? Why should he be insulted even though they were already dead? It was fine to scold him, but scolding his parents had definitely crossed Shaoling Yu's bottom line and reverse scale. Dragons had reverse scales, and those who touched them would be enraged. Weren't humans like this too? Shaoling Yu didn't scold him back. It was like biting a dog and not biting back. He only took 2 steps forward. With just these 2 steps, his murderous intent had already surged out. "If you think you have the guts, then tell your guards to retreat 300 feet. Shaoling Yu said coldly. "All right, Yin Mo waved his hand behind him. The Yin family guards hesitated but still retreated 300 feet. Sangji also retreated 300 feet with the Sang family cultivators, leaving the empty space for Xiao Lingyu and Yin Mo. Sangji's face was full of anticipation and mockery, while Meiling was a little worried. Regardless of whether they won or lost this battle, the conflict between Xiao Lingyu and the Yun family would deepen. Moreover, if they lost with Yin Mo's personality, he definitely wouldn't leave Xiao Lingyu a way out. Xiao Lingyu also realized this, so there was no need to be polite. His aura began to rise crazily, and in a moment, it was already fluctuating with the aura of the seventh firmament of longevity. His clothes fluttered even though there was no wind. His black hair also danced. Yin Mo naturally wouldn't sit and wait. His aura also began to rise continuously. To everyone's surprise, the fluctuations of his aura actually proved that he already had the cultivation of the eighth firmament of longevity. It seems that this guy isn't just a guy who's all talk. Alright, since he recognized me, he must also know that I once injured the second butler of the seventh firmament of longevity at the Awakening God Tower. If he's still at the seventh firmament of longevity, he definitely won't agree to a one-on-one fight with me. He shouldn't be as simple as he looks on the surface. Maybe he was deliberately angering me just now. Another scheming person. In an instant, Xiao Lingyu thought of many things. Offending my Yin family is your stupidest choice. Yin Mo sneered. Then, his body swayed and he rushed toward Xiao Lingyu at an extremely fast speed. When he was about to approach, a long, narrow saber appeared in Yin Mo's hand. The long saber flickered with a cold light and looked incomparably sharp. Moreover, there were demonic patterns on the saber. Xiao Lingyu released his full strength and instantly reached the aura of the eighth firmament of longevity. When the long saber pierced towards him, his body quickly rose 3 feet high. The long saber pierced through the air. Yin Mo smiled indifferently. Then, he raised his saber and slashed upwards with one arm. Before the blade arrived, a large expanse of bright saber light had already whizzed out first. Xiao Lingyu shouted softly. The primal chaos, true, fire gushed out from his palm and quickly turned into a fire snake, pouncing towards the saber light from top to bottom. Boom, a dull sound was heard. The saber light and the flames intertwined. First, a dazzling brilliance erupted, and then they were annihilated at the same time. However, at this moment, the long saber's body rose into the air with Yin Mo's body and caught up. The saber's body slashed towards Xiao Lingyu's crotch. Humph! Xiao Lingyu snorted coldly and raised one leg. Then, the tip of his foot accurately pointed at the long saber's body and kicked it slightly to the side. The long saber swept past Xiao Lingyu's shoulder. Just as it passed his shoulder, it suddenly rose horizontally and slashed horizontally towards Xiao Lingyu's neck. Although it was a simple close-range attack, it could be seen that Yin Mo's attack speed was extremely fast and the attack was very coherent. He should have spent a lot of energy cultivating his saber technique. Xiao Lingyu had also gone through thousands of battles. His fighting experience and awareness were not bad. At this moment, he could not dodge, but he could lean back in this split second and let the long saber sweep past the tip of his nose. The saber light was dazzling, and the wind from the saber made his face hurt. However, just as the long saber passed, Xiao Lingyu felt a sharp pain coming from one of his calves. Then, his body involuntarily flew backwards. It turned out that when the long saber swept past the tip of his nose, Yin Mo had kicked his calf. In terms of short-distance movement speed and close-range attack speed, Yin Mo was clearly much stronger than Xiao Lingyu. All these years, the reason why Yin Mo's cultivation progress had slowed down was because he had focused on cultivating and a large amount of time and energy on cultivating his fighting awareness and skills. He did not blindly seek a breakthrough in his realm. If not for this, without so many years of study and hard training, how could Yin Mo have an advantage in front of Xiao Lingyu, who had a strong fighting awareness? After all, Xiao Yu had just ascended not long ago. He should be proud that he had the courage to face an expert at the 8th level of the longevity realm. Uncle Ta, he won't lose, right? Sang Ji asked Uncle Ta. Although she was not related to Xiao Yu in any way, compared to Yunimo, she naturally favored Xiao Yu. He can win. Uncle Ta narrowed his eyes and said with certainty. Sang Ji, Miling, and the other 3 Sang family guards all looked at Uncle Tuo in astonishment. They did not know where Uncle Tuo's confidence in Xiao Yu came from. As Xiao Yu flew backwards, Yunimo did not stop. His long saber stabbed forward, and he chased after him. Xiao Yu's thoughts moved. Before Yunimo could get close, the wings of extreme speed appeared behind him. The disadvantage in speed could be made up for with the wings of extreme speed. The pair of silver wings stored an immeasurable amount of spatial energy. Furthermore, after many years of cultivation and refinement by Xiao Yu, the quality of the silver wings was even higher than Xiao Yu's body. It could be considered a special spatial treasure. The silver wings suddenly flapped, and Xiao Yu's body turned into a silver light and flew to the side. Yunimo, who was chasing after him, missed. Just as he dodged, the wings of extreme speed flapped again, and Xiao Yu actually charged back at Yunimo. As he charged back, a weapon appeared in Xiao Yu's hand. It was a short saber that was as thin as a cicada's wing. Just as Yunimo saw the saber light shoot out from the short saber, he was already enveloped by a circle of golden light. The golden light even sent him flying backwards. Then, he saw the saber light explode on the golden light. Huh. Chapter 791. The Super Hardcore Group, Group Number 366735581, can hold 500 people, has been cleared. Hardcore readers, please rejoin. Subscription screenshots are required to enter the group. Non-hardcore readers and author friends are not allowed to disturb. Xiao Fei will often appear in this group to discuss the plot with everyone and to remind everyone of the exact update time. Super Hardcore Group Backup Group, Group Number 8998043, Normal Group, can hold 100 people. It turned out that the members of the Super Hardcore Group were very complicated. There were real hardcore fans, authors who were only there to advertise, and scammers with bad intentions who casually spread false information. Therefore, Xiao Fei cleared the group and recruited new members. The reorganized Super Hardcore Group will strictly check the members of the group. Only hardcore readers who have been subscribing for a long time will be accepted. After entering the group, please be mindful. Do not post any dirty pictures, talk about politics or other sensitive topics, and do not casually insult the other members of the group. This group mainly focuses on communicating about the plot of the story. Xiao Fei will take the time to chat with everyone about the plot of the story. She will also tell everyone the exact update time every day. As long as you're a long-term supporter of Xiao Fei, you can join. You can even stay in the group for 10,000 years as long as you abide by the law and occasionally make an appearance. As for the recent updates, Little Fei was actually doing the same as usual. The first 20 days were 2 updates, and the following 10 days were 3 updates. It was the same whether or not the big bosses are giving out gold medals. Of course, if there were more gold medals in the beginning, Little Fei would consider adding more. The update time is usually before 2100 hours PM, so that everyone will not wait too late. It is not realistic for Xiao Fei to completely fix the update time. After all, Xiao Fei has parents, a son who is not even a year old, and a wife. There will always be times when she is busy, and there will always be times when she is not in a good mood. Everyone should be more understanding. It is not easy for anyone. Xiao Fei could only try his best to release his new chapters as early as possible. He had been writing for 3 years now. If it wasn't for his strong character, how could there be so many people reading Xiao Fei's stories? That you're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.